Okay, great. Is my voice working?
Yep, your voice is working.
All right. Got it. All right, then we got quorum. That's great. Took a little bit longer than usual, but not too far. And we do have two members I just want to recognize. I believe we have a new regional 4 director, Chris Woods. Are you on the call?
Yeah, I'm here, Michael.
Great. Welcome, Chris. Great to have you. And then Marlo's been with us, but I believe she's now the new director of Contra Costa County. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Congratulations. And I think you were helping in Region 2 before. So
Yes, that's right.
You got a little practice.
Yeah, thank you.
Welcome aboard, both of you. So it's good to have you guys. I'm going to open up for public comment on items not listed on the agenda at this time. Okay, we're going to go ahead and jump into the agenda. We've got our standard emergency piece on the action item list in terms of the state governor's emergency. We'll go through that. We're going to still continue that until the state removes that emergency order. And then we've got 6 items under the consent calendar. John will review with you. And we've got 14 informational items. As I mentioned before, our agendas are going to be pretty packed for the rest of rollout to Cal-Win County. So we're going to have lots of topics and lots of interaction for our directors and those of the public that are on the call. Without anything else, John, and I guess we can go ahead and start the agenda.
Our first action item is we need the board to approve to continue to operate under the emergency orders. I know that Jeff, our general counsel, is on. Jeff, any updates that you have regarding the state of emergency and what you're hearing regarding COVID-19 and those items?
No, the state of emergency remains in effect. And I think different counties are dealing with it differently, but this particular rule is still applicable. And I haven't seen any change yet, perhaps later this summer.
Very good. Thanks, Jeff. Appreciate that. So I think this is open for board consideration to continue to have our public governing bodies operate under the emergency procedures. So this is open for consideration, Michael.
I'll move to approve.
This is Becky, Region 3. I'll second.
Good. All right. Marla, do you approve?
Yes.
Thank you. And Rachel, do you approve?
Yes.
Thank you. Chris, do you approve?
Is that me, Chris Woods?
Yes, it is.
Okay, I'm sorry. I want to make sure there wasn't another Chris you're calling. Yes.
Thank you. Deborah Martinez?
Yes.
Thank you. Gilbert?
Yes.
Very good. Melissa?
Yes.
Very good. Deborah Bates?
Yes.
Thank you. Roxana?
Yes.
Thank you. And Cynthia?
Yes.
Thank you. All right, let's go to the next item. That brings us to our consent calendar. Our first item up was the action items. There's 1, 2, 3 of the action items that are due today that are on the agenda. Action item 3 was really sort of coordination around training materials that counties can leverage for induction training. I know June's out on PTO today. I was wondering if Ashley or Nicole might have an update on the coordination that's been going on with counties.
Hi, John. This is Henry Archangel. Ashley is out today also, and I believe Nicole is out too. So, but we do have an update. So there's 2 parts to that action item. The first one is the CIT. Ashley did create a CIT number 87-22. She submitted it on March 25th, and it was sent to all PPOC members. And the title of the CIT is training materials in the CalSAWS Learning Management System, LMS. And in that CIT, it includes all the inventory of everything we have in CalSAWS in regards to the web-based training are on there. The quick guides, there's about 90 of them that's part of it. There's also job aids that's included in there. There's over 200 job aids that we've included on there. There are about 20 fact sheets that's included in LMS, and also a lot of the quick tip videos. So that, I believe the CIT part is taken care of, John. The rest is the CRFI that we're doing. And I've been informed that Ashley actually wants to talk about this at the next training committee, which is going to happen on May 4th, before she crafts the CRFI. So she would like to talk to the committee first, and then we'll develop the CRFI. So I'm not sure, John, if we want to continue this, if you want to push this for next month to get an update on that one.
We will. Thank you for the update, Henry. Ashley?
John,
Yeah.
sorry, thank you. Yeah, and Ashley let me know that they were working on it, hit a little bit of a delay because she would like to know where the counties want to put any of the documents. Are we going to put them on the web portal? And so anyway, they're working on that, and we'll go to the committee and get that smoothed out.
Very good. And just a little bit of context for our board members, counties with the amount of induction training that's going on, and the transition to CalSAWS, and what's people are saying, what can we leverage? What does the project have that can be leveraged as we're looking for new classes coming in and training folks? What our project materials are there? So that was the CIT. The CRFI and the training committee are really looking at some of our counties to say, can we share some of your induction training, post it in the right place, so counties maybe can take that and adapt those materials that are already developed for use yourselves as you go forward, so you don't have to start from scratch, because with the transition over to CalSAWS, there's a lot more training materials that need to be developed. So again, we will update next month. The other items are on the agenda, and I have to really provide a quick update. Action item number 6 really called out Madera County. I was bringing up claiming issues, and Madera County doesn't have claiming issues. Madera County brought up that, hey, there's some claiming issues out there that you need to look into because everybody's having them. And I want to thank Deborah for bringing those to our attention and her staff. But the way that it's shown on the agenda and the action item called out Madera County, and I should have been more particular as we put together the agenda. Thank you, Deborah, to you and your staff for calling those out. It's a wider item and a wider communication item that we're dealing with. So it's probably a little bit inaccurate on the agenda, but the action item is still the same, and we'll be talking about the communication and how we're trying to track through some of the claiming and reporting items and some communication items that we have later on the agenda.
That's appreciated.
Yep. So there are the minutes. You also have a couple of change notices. Change notice B, C, D, and E are all associated with ARPA funding associated with Benefits Cal. The Accenture change notice 16, the changes that we're getting funded for, specifically the CBO dashboards and some enhancements to reporting, are in these change orders, our change notices. What's not there and what's going to be coming next month is the release of information that hadn't had time to have some clarity in packaging this month. That will come next month to the board on a consent calendar. But the reason that Accenture, Deloitte, and ClearBest all have change notices on this is because ARPA has funded those. Accenture, there's the API and the communication mechanism between Benefits Cal and CalSAWS. So there's some changes to that need to be done. You can see that's $272,000 in change that's covered within the project budget. For Deloitte, change order number 3, work order 4, that's 1.7 million. That's where a lot of the functionality resides for those 2 items up front. You'll see in D that there's a Deloitte change order 4, which includes some updates to Benefits Cal optional enhancements and sort of moving around some milestones. We had to make room for the ARPA functionality. We've moved out some milestones. It doesn't change pricing or anything else like that, but it aligns those project milestones as we've gone forward. And then ClearBus, change order number 6, work order 11, is for them to do QA on this particular work. And that is also covered within the budget. The last item on the consent calendar is we have a contract with Csac for our employment contract. CalWin, WCDS, has used Csac to staff employees as they've gone forward and maintained for the 18 counties the CalWin system. We have adopted that contract and it's been assigned over to the JPA. Csac is not expanding that contract. We cannot hire any more people onto that contract. However, they're going to maintain that contract as long as they're Csac employees on CalSAWS and things like that. So this will be an ongoing contract as long as we have Csac employees, and we go and expand it and extend it year by year as we go through. So this is just the extension of that for an additional year. So Michael, there's an overview of that. These are open for board questions or action.
Any questions or comments from our board members on the 6 items that we have on consent calendar that John just highlighted and reviewed? I see a hand up with Marla, and I also see Gilbert's hand up. We'll start with Marla.
Thank you. I just have a comment and a request for the last item, the Csac option. That's ongoing support to CalWin counties. And as we move through the waves, CalWin counties that are in the final waves have expressed concern that CalWin support will decline for them, but they're going to need the same level of CalWin support all the way to the end. So although I hear that there will be no positions added here, I just hope that any vacancies get filled. And I just want to make sure we're providing the same level of support to the end for CalWin.
Good comment, Marla. CalWin is fully funded to the end. The Csac contract isn't getting added to, but we do have other mechanisms to make sure that we utilize that full budget, either by getting folks assigned from counties and funding those positions, or through regional government services. So this contract and not expanding it should in no way diminish the support that the counties have through the end of CalWin. And this contract will also continue because many of those Csac employees have come into long-term CalSAWS positions, and they will be CalSAWS employees and continue to be Csac employees as well as we go forward.
Okay, I appreciate that. And just one response to that, your comment about relying partly on county staff for support there, and I know that we do that. I do just want to note that we're all experiencing recruiting and retention problems, right? So just again, want to make sure that we're not increasing the burden for counties.
Thank you, Marla.
If I can address that, Marla, this is Diane. We currently only have one county staff person that is part of our WCDS CalWin team on the consortium side. And we currently have one vacancy, which we have recruited for. So the team is, for the most part, full. So we continue to support you.
Thank you. Thanks, Michael.
My question was kind of to the point. I think that's been addressed as we discussed this is the RGS employees, and assuming based on what I heard is that as we're not expanding more employees on Csac, but as the need is there and that they're not county supported, then they could be given an RGS employment contract. That's what I understood.
That's correct, Gilbert. We'll continue to use RGS. They're great partners. So if counties cannot support. We always reach out to counties and know that counties are having a hard time with staffing and everything else like that. Our first choice is to go to the counties. If we can't do that, we will hire through RGS, and they're going to continue their relationship with the consortium.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
Okay, were there any other questions or comments from our board members? I don't see any hands, but if you want to verbalize, you can at this point. Okay, any public comment on these consent items? Okay, hearing none, do we have a motion to approve them as a whole?
Motion to approve, Marla.
Thanks, Marla.
Deborah, second.
Thanks, Deborah.
Very good. Thank you very much. All right. Rachel, do you approve?
Yes.
You. Becky, do you approve?
Yes.
You. Chris Woods.
Yes.
Thank you. Gilbert, do you approve?
Yes.
Thank you. Melissa.
Yes.
Thank you. Deborah Bates.
Yes.
Roxana.
Yes.
Thank you. Michael
Yes.
and Cynthia.
Yes.
Very good. Thank you very much. That brings us on to our informational items, Michael.
Okay, so we've got 14 of these, some more extensive than others, depending on where they're referencing in the project. But we're going to start off with our typical Gantt chart review and then dive into the risk areas and then go from there. So I'll turn it back over to John, who's got our speakers teed up.
Yep, I think Arnold and Rachel and Don are going to join.
Absolutely. All right. Hello, everybody. Thank you for all of the support, because this has been a tremendous ride that we've been on with our September go live with our C4 counties. And we continue to accelerate even as more work comes through the pipeline. So just to review our CalSAWS Gantt chart as far as upcoming major milestones. So as we look today in April, the upcoming milestone that is right in front of us is the Los Angeles County go live on the imaging solution, as well as the decommission of YBN and the commissioning of Benefits Cal for use by Los Angeles County residents for accessing the services. So that is occurring this weekend, is a major focus of the team. In parallel to all of that, we still have app dev testing, as well as our prep for UAT for the CalWIN counties, and looking forward into the CalWIN execution. C4 conversion, we are continuing to provide the post-conversion support and stability, and we'll have some additional insight on how that is progressing in our informational items as well. And then we're still focusing obviously on our CalWIN conversion as we're going through our converted data test execution. We'll be executing our mock conversion and cutovers and the post cutover support. From an imaging perspective, we have our go live for Los Angeles County going on this weekend. And then we're still working on our CalWIN Wave 1 and Wave 2. So the rest of the year remains very energetic for the CalSAWS platform as we continue to support production, as well as preparing for our first wave of CalWIN counties that are going on to be implemented and converting over to the CalSAWS platform in October of this year. Rapidly following with Wave 2 in February of 2023, Wave 3 in April of 2023, Wave 4 in June of 2023, 5 in August, and then culminating in Wave 6 in October. So the next 12 to 18 months will continue to be very energetic, as I say, as well as exciting as we continue to add more of the counties onto the core platform. On top of that, we still have our normal releases that are releasing both new functionality as well as the GAGR functionality and the new premise items that are coming through. So those are normal releases that you can see are kind of roughly running on every 2-month basis, as well as we have our release when ready. So all of the teams are working hard and are continuing to support our C4 counties, Los Angeles counties, and are looking forward to the Calhoun counties coming online. With that, I'll turn it over to Rachel to talk over Benefits Cal.
Thank you, Arnold, and good morning, everyone. I wanted to give a little bit of an update on where we are with Benefits Cal, and I'll say, and as much as I would like to go back in history as I'm looking at the slide, today is actually not last year. Today is actually a little bit further along of where we are in 2022. So wanted to talk a little bit about what we've got coming up in April and in the upcoming months for Benefits Cal. We do have the excitement of bringing on our 40th county this coming weekend with Los Angeles onto Benefits Cal. Along with that will be release 3 for Benefits Cal that's going to provide some additional features for our customers. One piece of that is we're going to be increasing the number of languages that are supported in Benefits Cal to get closer and closer to where the full complement of threshold languages for addressing BMU will be incorporated. In addition to that, in release 3, we have the ability for customers to be able to understand what their income reporting thresholds are. And then the counties are going to get some new ad hoc reporting capabilities so they can understand a little bit more usage and adoption of what exists within Benefits Cal. We are going to complete with the remaining languages by the end of May, which will be 3 additional languages that will bring our full compliance with the overall threshold languages. And then we have a release coming up for release 4 in July. If folks remember, I believe it was 2 board meetings ago, we had talked about the introduction of some new features for the funding tied to ARPA that John had talked about a little bit earlier. And what that's focused on is addressing our student population, some additional outreach efforts associated with Benefits Cal, and then also working on the much anticipated release of information and extended CBO functionality within Benefits Cal, which resulted in splitting out what was our release 4 into a release 4 and release 5. So the complement of those items for release 5 will be delivered next year in January for Benefits Cal. If we move on to the next slide for Calhoun ISS, wanted to give a little bit of an overview here too. And I'm going to talk about a couple of these later on when Arnold and I get into risk. So I just wanted to give a real quick overview on this. The team is continuing with 2B efforts for BPR. We're right now working with the Wave 5 counties. We have gone back with Wave 1 counties to close out some items around outstanding questions around processes. I've started with some closeout items for Wave 2, and then we'll be going back with Waves 3 and 4. The team has also been working on change discussion guides for Wave 1 that is tied to our OCM efforts, as well as making sure that the communication information is getting out. So the team has started to get out infographics. They started to get out newsletters. There is more coming for the Wave 1 counties, and it will be provided to the Change Network Champions, which is another thing that had kicked off 3 months ago. And the Change Network Champions are starting to get some more of that information to make sure that the counties are ready, and those readiness surveys to measure that readiness in the county are there. We also are working on ongoing is training. We've been working with the counties to solicit feedback about the county-specific training curriculum, and the Wave 1 counties would have received within the last 2 weeks their county-specific training plans for Wave 1. And then lastly, on the implementation front, the team has been working on doing pretty significant, I'll call it surgery, to the work plans that we had provided to the Wave 1 counties, and then had provided a preliminary draft to the Wave 2 counties to incorporate feedback that we had received from the counties to make sure that they've got a little bit more detail so that the counties are aware of what's up and coming. So with that, I am going to turn it over to Dawn, who will talk about Central Print.
Thanks, Rachel. So in Central Print, we are focused actually on the CalWin counties as we do not have an LA implementation this weekend. Los Angeles has been on board with us for several months now, and we are processing the 40 counties Central Print at this time. So our focus has been on the Wave 1 counties, where we have been walking through with them all of the special print jobs that they do and any other services they may need in the print area that they are currently receiving, either from their current print vendor, or in the case of Contra Costa and Tulare, from their own internal print vendors or their county themselves. And so as we work through that with them, we're identifying the various items that we'll need to make sure we can provide as we go into Wave 1. And we have just started our Wave 2 CalWin counties with the kickoff meeting a couple of weeks ago. So we are starting to engage them as well. Other than that, our focus is on our ongoing operations and making sure that we continue to get multiple millions of envelopes and impressions printed each month and out the door on time. So with that, I think we are done with our review of the Gantt chart. So I will send that back to Michael.
Okay, great. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
All right. Good. Device is working properly now. Great. Any questions or comments from our board members on the presentation? I know Gantt charts aren't that exciting, but they actually lead to success on these projects. So we want to definitely pay attention to them. So if there's anything that you guys want further than what the presenters gave, please ask it now. Okay, great. Any public comment on that presentation? Okay, we'll go ahead and move on. Thank you very much, Rachel and Arnold. Appreciate it. And we'll go ahead and move to the next presentation. I believe that's going to be a discussion of risks and mitigation plans. Talk about exciting stuff.
Exactly. And we'll also have QA join Rachel and myself as we go through and discuss these risks, so that we'll provide an overview, and then we'll also have QA provide some additional color commentary around that as well. So we'll start out first with risk number 237, and this is scaling a batch for 58 counties, which may have an impact on system performance. And we've been making positive progress on this throughout the last several months. And we can see it through the fact that we're meeting our batch SLAs on a consistent basis for the system. In addition to that, we continue to look at the nightly batch runs as they are occurring, and are looking forward to the increased volumes that are going to be occurring when we start converting the CalWin counties onto the system as well. So the first round of performance changes have already been deployed to production and are producing excellent results. We have additional roadmap items and additional performance tests in progress. And then we also have CalWin County performance testing that's going to be occurring with Wave 1 scheduled for May through July. So we have 3 more months of testing and performance testing to continue to improve that batch performance. Wave 2 performance testing is scheduled for the fall, and a combined performance test for waves 3 through 6 are planned for the end of the year. So we will continue to keep an eye on both production as well as looking at the volumes coming through. Dan, I'll let you add additional commentary.
Thanks, Arnold. For this one, 237, there's a weekly scheduled meeting that occurs on Wednesday, as well as daily activities going on. It has the top attention of QA, Accenture, and a consortium. A roadmap was planned several months ago, where the entire batch schedule was looked at. And in that context, about half a dozen categories of items were prioritized. Broad examples of things include the front end of the batch window with super trigger, security and encryption, as well as correspondence in the middle, and then the reports ingestions and those queries, as well as interfaces. To date, progress has been made against the plans. Each of those areas, we address what percentage improvement we wanted to see. So far, those measures have been met or exceeded. One thing that we're going to continue to monitor here is, as one process speeds up, it has a chance to cause contention with another. So as things adjust, we're also monitoring the impact on the rest of the schedule, number one. And number two, as more counties roll on with CalWIN, all those county-specific batch interfaces and processes will have an impact as well. So this is a risk that will continue to be monitored through wave 1 go live, as well as waves 2 through 6.
Thank you, Dan. Moving on to risk 256, imaging scalability performance degradation and the operational process risk may impact the go live dates for upcoming counties. So I know that we've been talking a lot around the imaging and providing updates at the JPA and PSC meetings. I'll be having a more detailed deep dive to give current status on it. So from an overall, just high level for here, significant progress has been made as far as stabilization of the production imaging solution, as well as the completion of additional performance testing that it is modeling the load on the system when Los Angeles County migrates to it this weekend, as well as we've done performance testing on the 58 counties. As a result, there were a number of items and performance enhancements that were added to the system that have resulted in a material improvement in the performance for the 39 C4 counties that are on it today. In addition, we have implemented a number of defect fixes that have allowed us to decommission the workarounds. So from an overall performance and stability perspective, the imaging solution, it has greatly stabilized and has reached the point where we were able to provide a green light for the Los Angeles County go live this weekend. Dan, I'll turn it over to you for additional commentary.
Thanks, Arnold. As Arnold mentioned, this one has a bit more of a deep dive in agenda item 11 of JPA, so that'll be covered later. From a QA perspective, the two broad areas that we're participating in, the first is performance review and load testing activities. Our team is involved with Accenture and consortium in that testing in those environments, and specifically going through the logs and monitoring the outcomes that you'll see in that agenda item. The second area is we have a test analyst participating when the counties are doing their specific functional testing. LA has been doing quite a bit of extensive testing. We also have an analyst focused more on the technical side, making sure we hit all the various image types and sizes that have had enhancements put into them or updates to date. Finally, for Go Live in LA, we have a couple members of our teams participating with consortium and Accenture in on-site support in LA next week. I've seen the travel schedules are heading out to 4 offices, so there will be some people out in the high impact counties for this item as well.
Thank you, Dan. Moving on to risk 258. This is in regards to the CalWIN conversion cutover window, being at risk for completing past the 84-hour targeted time frame. So what the team has been doing to mitigate this risk as we've been creating the golden data sets, we've been capturing the overall timings in order to look at what that timeline will be at. In addition, we have mock conversions that are going to be executed that are going to be real live or going to mimic what the actual schedule is over the course, so we can get the realistic timings as well. So that the combination of those two items is giving the team additional insight into where there may be bottlenecks, and they are currently implementing enhancements to be able to overcome those to fit within the window. The wave 1 mock conversion results will be leveraged to reassess the risk and determine if other actions are required for waves 2 through 6. In addition, we are in conversations to discuss the amount of data that is actually coming over, because there are some parts of the database and some of the tables to where that historical data is less important and isn't referenced. And so the team is looking at other options to reduce the amount of data that's coming over as a mitigation for the window as well. And so based upon the latest case data as well, that's the variable as days go by and as new cases are opened. So overall, we have many inputs into the process, and the team continues to evaluate that. Dan, I'll let you add additional commentary.
So on this one, we had a very similar risk during C4 cutover last September. With C4, we were converting 30% of California's caseload all at once. With CalWIN, we're doing 40% over 6 waves. However, the challenge here is with transformation. So the data model between C4 and LA was quite similar, although the loads were higher. With this one, there's a significant amount of additional logic that's being processed to transform the CalWIN data model to work with CalSAWS. So that's specifically what's driving this risk. And we're monitoring the 2 items that Arnold discussed as far as mitigation measures. One is tuning of the programs that exist. And the second is looking at what measures can be taken to reduce the amount of data. Can archive or historical information come later? So.
Thank you, Dan. Let's move on to the next slide. So I'll turn it over to Rachel to review 262.
Perfect. And I'm going to have Abby Dira from QA join me on this one as well. In the Gantt chart, I had mentioned a little bit about some things that we've been doing to provide some updates around planning. So wanted to provide a little bit more detail on this one. We've heard from a number of the counties, not just the Wave 1 counties, but the subsequent Wave counties for CalWIN, that they need to have information that is extensive, that is timely in order for the counties to be able to be ready. And so every month we've been talking about what we've been doing relative to making sure that we're getting that information to the counties and making sure that they've got the information they need. And to be fully transparent, there still are some things that we need to provide to the counties, that we're collecting information across all the different threads of work. But marked progress, I will say, has been made between last month's board meeting and this board meeting, in the fact that we now have an integrated work plan that has brought together all of the efforts across the project. There's still some items that we have got to complete to provide that completeness of view and vision to the counties. But it is our source of truth now. And so it is the information that's being used to then drive the county specific work plans and then feed into those checklists for the counties so that the counties understand and we understand whether or not we're ready for go live. So the checklists have been updated to reflect what was in the work plan, and those have been completed for Wave 1. We will be proceeding forward on making those updates as well as for the Wave 2 counties, and then taking the lessons learned into the Wave 3 work plan and the Wave 3 checklist, and then the waves beyond. So it's important that we're taking that insight and guidance that we've received from all of you in Wave 1 as we've navigated through this together. And then coming up, looking forward, and we're at T-7 right now. Next month is when we have our completeness of readiness dashboard that brings together both the project information as well as the county information into the dashboard that we're going to use to start tracking from that executive level view. And then the month following that is when we start our formal governance related meetings around green light. So those are what we have coming up relative to providing the county's information and how we end up getting to our October date. Abby, is there anything you wanted to add as well?
Just a couple things, Rachel. Thank you. Perfect. So from a readiness perspective, Rachel had mentioned the work plan updates that are happening. This feeds into readiness reporting, and as Rachel had mentioned, this is regarding that readiness reporting feeds into through the dashboard and packet, which will be coming up very soon. One of the things that we have heard regarding readiness reporting is that counties are not sure if they're on track. So we're really working with the teams to make sure that the dashboard and the packet reflect the county readiness and whether they are or are not on track, and making sure that that information is reflected there. Also for the green light governance, QA is working to stand up the green light governance model and really putting together the meeting schedule of all of those green light meetings that will be happening up through go live. Thank you, Rachel.
I'm going to turn it back over to Arnold and Dan for 263.
All right, thank you, Rachel. So risk number 263 is related to the converted data test for our CalWIN counties and the potential for an impact to the start of UAT if there are high priority defects that are still in existence coming out of that. Overall status on this is that Golden Data Set 7 was delivered earlier this week and is undergoing validation. That the P1s that had been identified were included in the creation of that. And so the team is going through the additional testing and validation. But we have added additional resources to the conversion team as well as testers so that we are able to proactively test the process as we are going through it and avoid further priority defects from being identified. So in the event that they do, we are working on any contingency plans so that when it comes to the UAT, there are appropriate workarounds or remediation steps are there. And as additional golden data sets are produced, we will do the same. Dan, good. Turn it over to you for commentary.
Yeah. For the bulk of quality assurance testing, as defects are resolved by the delivery teams and deployed to the test environments, we can resolve those pretty much as quickly as we get them within a week. The challenge with converted data test is those things need to be deployed. The data needs to be re-extracted and then reloaded to the test environment. So that's what is being discussed within this risk where you see GDS 7 and 8. Those are the golden data sets. 7 was refreshed this week. So the QA team has a burn down chart that has shown that we're behind plan, behind where we want to be for the past couple months. This week, we have the new version of data and are re-executing our tests. We are also going to re-baseline that to match the plan for what is in GDS 7 and 8. So we're testing the functionality as it comes through. Last comment on this is this one has top project attention of several people on this call, and we review this item every Thursday on schedule and then with other additional meetings as required.
Thank you, Dan. Let's move on to the next slide. Rachel, turn over for 268.
Perfect. And I'm going to bring Wendy in on this, but for very short, because we do have an agenda item that is specific to 268 later on. But just as a reminder, all of the risks that we're talking about this morning amongst our entire crew here roll up to this umbrella level 268, which is what we're using to track if there is something that would impact from an issue perspective that would drive potentially a change in what we need to do from a contingency viewpoint, that we have this overarching risk or this overarching risk. As we've talked about before, this is just, I'll call it solid project management. That we are tracking that if any one of these were to create an instance that we needed to have a plan for it. And what Wendy and I and Arnold and Dan will talk about later on is what that preliminary plan looks like. It's just something that we need to have from just a strong planning viewpoint. Wendy, is there anything you want to add to 268?
Not right now. I think we have a whole section dedicated just to go through the details. So there's more to come on that one, but thanks, Rachel. Yeah,
sure thing. Okay, 269, and Dan, you can join me on this one as well. We've been tracking risk related to making sure that the counties have sufficient information in order to be able to refactor their ad hoc reports, and wanted to provide a bit of an update on where we are with this today. So we had talked in the previous board meeting around a 4-step approach, and we are executing on that approach. And the feedback from the counties that we have had is that the approach is actually moving the needle for the counties in terms of the first item, which is around education, which was an area that we had heard is we need to be aware and we need to understand what is in CalSAWS, how that actually looks and is reflective of what we have in CalWIN for reports day, so we can really understand the fit and where there may be, where there could potentially be areas that the counties are going to have to then build those ad hoc reports and the timing associated with them, knowing that not all of the reports would need to be there on day one. So the sessions are going on to assist the counties with their assessment. around that inventory to identify not just which reports require that refactoring, but also when those reports would need to be refactored by, and then also looking at the frequency of those reports. And then in addition to that, there is a technical onboarding activity that the folks that would actually be developing those ad hoc reports are going to be onboarded to get a more deep dive into what that ad hoc schema looks like, so that there is an understanding of the data structures underlying with the county converted data, which is something that I know that the counties have been requesting, so that they can understand, seeing in their environment what those structures actually look like, to see what they may have to refactor. So that was a piece that we've also heard from the counties. And then the last two items, we are providing some basic support around refactoring that I will say extends some of that education, but we also are including an optional support available to the counties that if the refactoring effort exceeds what the counties are able to do, that the counties can reach out and request support to help with getting those reports refactored. Dan, anything you'd like to add?
Just from a QA perspective, the two primary things we're looking at here are the training processes. So we have a team monitoring that. And then access. It's one thing to train and read about the data model. It's another to experience it. So from an access perspective, confirming that those counties have network access as well as security profiles that allow them to get to the data to modify their either reports or APIs within their ancillary systems.
Great. If we can move on to 270, and I'll have Abby come back and join me on 270. 270 is where we're tracking the ongoing updates that are needed to the change discussion guides to make sure that the counties have got information included in those change discussion guides that can help with the conversations within the county around preparing for the change. So wanted to provide a couple of updates on where we are. We had reported in the previous board meeting that we had been going back to the Wave 1 counties to make sure that we had represented the completeness of the changes that would be taking place between the move from CalWIN to CalSAWS, and so that inventory has been completed. We also received feedback from the Wave 1 counties in an informal fashion, not in a formal review, but an informal fashion on some things that they would like to see that were incorporated into the formal submission of the change discussion guides for review. So you'll see there's a county review that is going to take place over the course of roughly a month. The change discussion guides were provided on the 12th of April to the counties as well as to the consortium. It's in a formal comment period right now for review. And following that formal comment period, where we are expecting the comments to come back by the 26th, will be a week to address them. And then we will have a formal review of the final version of the change discussion guides. One thing I wanted to add, just 2 items of note, is that between the previous versions and the new version, there were a couple of things that the counties asked for. One is that there's more reflection of what is in CalWIN versus what is in CalSAWS, and the team has incorporated that feedback. There still is additional feedback to incorporate through this comment response period where we're getting some additional views. The counties have also said we'd like some orientation to where we are in the system by putting in screenshots that would help with anchoring some understanding, not to replicate what would be in training, not to replicate what would be in job aids, but to help with a little bit of orientation and anchoring of that conversation. And so both of those have been incorporated into, the first is incorporated into the draft version. The screenshots are going to be incorporated into the final version. Abby, do you want to add anything from a QA viewpoint?
Sure, thank you, Rachel. So as Rachel had mentioned, during the county review period, which is an informal review period, we did receive some feedback from the counties that we were working to address, and QA supported the OCM team in addressing those comments and really facilitated some working sessions with the project teams that and brought together staff from the CalSAWS project that had knowledge and background of the CalWIN system and also the CalSAWS system SMEs. So, so we helped to orchestrate some of these working sessions and get a meeting of the minds together so that we could add that content that the counties had requested into the change discussion guides. And those discussions went very, very well. And we were able to add that content in. And as Rachel had mentioned, most of it was regarding terminology changes of what they call it now in CalWIN versus what it's called in CalSAWS. Other content includes capturing some descriptions of the CalWIN system flow and what's changing to the CalSAWS flow, and then really adding additional details on what users should know about this change and how it directly impacts them. Thank you.
Hey, Rachel, this is John. Just quickly, for transparency to the board members, this is an item that we're getting significant feedback on from the counties. The team's working diligently to try to address those. But I did want to mention this is an area of angst that we're continuing to go through and try to land jointly with the team and come on to the same page. But you know, this is an area of angst for, I think, both the project and the counties to make sure that we come to the right level of information to support the counties and what's in the deliverable. So you know, people are working well together. They're trying to land that, but I did want to acknowledge the work and the angst that are still around this that we still have to land.
Yeah, John, I appreciate that. Yes, there is a lot of angst around this. I think stemming partially due to what the initial intent of this change discussion guide was for. So appreciate that feedback or adding that additional item. I would say the other thing maybe to note here as well from a mitigation perspective is that we have added additional team members to the ISS team that have county knowledge on CalSAWS that have gone through the migration as well. And so they are also including their feedback from what an eligibility worker or a supervisor would have experienced and what would be helpful. So we're getting some of those insights incorporated into this as well to make sure that it's really meaningful. But to John's point, there is still some work to get through this comment review process so that we can get this to the counties. Okay, Arnold, I think you're back on, sir.
Yes, I am. If we move to the next slide, we will be covering off on our medium risks. Whoops, and back up one. There we go. So risk 236 is related to the previous risk around the batch schedule and the fact that analytics also is part of that overall nightly run. And the scaling of the analytics dashboards and reports for 58 counties may have an impact on overall system batch performance. And so much like we were doing with the normal CalSAWS batch process, we're also focusing in on the analytics and the reporting flows on looking at the nightly batch runs, as well as doing the performance testing that's going to be coming up here in the next 3 months. And so the team has made adjustments to those analytics to where we're seeing improved completion times on the reports. For those that are continuing to be produced later, the team continues to look at adjusting the schedule to pull those in. So we'll be doing the performance testing on the wave 1s, as well as there is performance testing for wave 2 and 3 through 6. And we continue to make good progress here as evidenced by the normal daily production batch process. Dan, I'll let you add commentary as well.
Yeah, 236 is a cousin to 237, the batch item we discussed at the top of the subject. This one is specific to the analytics and click and report extracts that occur. It will benefit from the measures that are occurring on the batch side. All of the risk factors on 236 are similar to 237, except for impact. That's why it's medium, is in this, when you're assessing them against each other, 237 impacts the data that goes out to interface partners and impacts customers. 236 is about really reporting. So it is important, but relative to the other, it's a medium. It's also monitored as part of that daily Wednesday meeting we have, tracking performance tuning efforts that are going on.
Thank you, Dan. Moving on to 264. This is related to the Calhoun County waves may not complete their imaging migration readiness activities by their designated wave go live dates. So there has been significant progress made with the Calhoun counties and the wave 1. I'll be able to dive deeper during the imaging status provided a little bit later. But at a high level, what we have been doing is taking the lessons learned from both the C4 counties that migrated over as well as Los Angeles County. And we are building that into the Calhoun counties and the migration process there. So we are going through the data mapping exercises, the export process, testing the exports, and testing the import process, and being very granular and mobilizing additional support for the counties as they go through that process. So we've communicated the lessons learned, and we're seeing them applied with the wave 1 and wave 2 counties. We're using the CITs and enhanced communications to be able to talk through the functionality changes that are occurring with the Calhoun counties. And we're still implementing the tracking templates and staying very close to the progress so that we can avoid some of the lessons that were learned with the initial set of conversion activities. Dan, I'll let you add further commentary.
Thanks, Arnold. A lot of the risks we've discussed to date have been about project readiness items and things the project controls. This is a county item that the project is also measuring. Across the 18 Calhoun counties, there's about a dozen different types of legacy imaging systems. So this is tracking the activities that need to occur to load up the CalSAWS data model. And these, to date, we do review this weekly across the 18 counties. Some of the things that we've had arise that have been resolved have been misunderstandings on how to map fields from that Calhoun data model to CalSAWS, to network access, to hardware availability. Some counties have chosen to load a hardware device called a Snowball, as well as contracting activities with legacy interface software partners. Sometimes those partners are needed to extract the data as well. So all those items are being monitored weekly, and we'll continue to report out as we work towards the conversion of imaging into CalSAWS for Calhoun.
Thank you, Dan. So then that brings us to the final medium risk that we'll be discussing today, and that's around the GAGR, UAT, and county data validation functionality may be delayed past May 2022. And so this is in relation to the converted data that's coming over from Calhoun and making sure that we have the GAGR functionality built into the CalSAWS as well. It's currently scheduled for delivery and on track for delivery with the 2205 release. We're continuing to look at overall ability of the Calhoun counties to validate that functionality and we'll be able to do so with wave 1 UAT. Wave 2 through 6 will have to validate with new data. So county validation will be being able to run the EDPC with the logic embedded in it. Dan, I'll turn it over to you for further commentary.
Yeah, this one started as a risk specific to UAT when we updated our UAT approach to a 43 county data set, which would be the 40 CalSAWS counties plus the wave 1 counties. And it was focused on how do we allow the wave 2 through 6 counties to get experience with their data as well, which is why the county data validation process was added to each of waves 2 through 6. This risk is actually evolving this week. We have received notice that one of the pieces of functionality within GAGR development activities planned for 2205 specific to time limits is going to be pushed out to 2207. We're having meetings today, and this has likely to come back next month as a high risk. We are working with delivery partners on the mitigations specific to UAT, which is planned for kickoff in late June. GAGR was already planned for later in July. So we're working to confirm that this functionality can still get into 2207 and be ready for UAT, the time limit pieces of GAGR. So just a hot item action update on that one.
Thank you, Dan. With that, that completes the review of the risks. Michael, I'll turn it over to you for questions.
Thank you, Arnold, Rachel, and Dan, for your guys' part of that presentation. This is obviously really the most serious part of our meeting. So I definitely want to open this up to questions and comments. One of the things I noted is risk 262, 270, and 269 are all heavily weighted on county readiness in one form or another. And that seems to be an area where I really want to make sure that the directors out there feel like they've got support around them to make certain decisions locally, and that there's enough dialogue about what kind of things that they need to be able to establish in their own teams. For instance, like a change unit, change management unit at the county level that can really reach out to each of the different groups and make sure that they're understanding what these change discussion guides really mean to them. And not just banking on if we get the product, the change discussion guide right, it's going to take care of itself. It won't. It's going to be about what that means on the ground and how we're managing, because it's a knowable entity. It's 18 counties. So it's not like we're talking about some number that's not knowable. It is, and a way to resource that and to continue to have a good dialogue with our directors out there that are impacted, so they do feel fully supported by the project, and that our vendors are coming up with different ways to make sure that we have that level of support out there, and that the information is available to the directors to make these decisions. I think that's critically important. And I do see Marla has her hand up, so I'm going to go turn it over to our Calvin directors that are out there that want to ask some questions, and anybody else want to, and I'll start with Marla. Go ahead.
Thank you, Michael. And yeah, I'm just ditto to everything that Michael just said. And I do feel like CalSAWS is being very responsive at this point. I appreciate that. And we need to continue to just be in dialogue. I do have some things I want to say about readiness, but I'm going to hold off on those to the later item when we talk more specifically about it. I did have a question here on this one related to risk 269 and refactoring our reports. One of the things that you mentioned today is that if counties don't feel like they have the skill set or the knowledge to get the refactoring done, there may be some support that's available to us. And I'm wondering, how do we access that support? What kind of support will that be? And is there a cost to counties for that?
So Marla, I'll take the first two items. The team that is supporting that has been supporting the education sessions, as the counties are going through those conversations, they can communicate to that group, or they can communicate to their TOS team member that there is a need associated with providing that support, so that we can then take it back to the project and work with the project to make sure that that support is provided, so we can understand what that looks like. That dependency of understanding what the universe is to complete is that, I'll call it that critical path item, to get through that first and then to provide that. From a cost perspective, and I'm actually going to lean a little bit on the consortium for this support relative to the cost as to how that would be supported from a financial viewpoint.
Rachel, this is Laura. I'll jump in there. So yep, our team on the consortia has been providing those training sessions, and 100% agree with you, Rachel. Understanding what that remaining workload looks like will drive the county cost associated with the work that may need to be done. So finishing that assessment and that mapping exercise is going to be an important first step for that decision-making process to begin.
And Laura, in part of what I was speaking to, and it might speak to what Marla's point is too, is that the director needs to know pretty specifically, what's available and how can they access it. So if it's available through the current project, budget, we need to state that. If it's available through a county purchase, then we need to state that so that they can exercise these, because each one of them has a process that we have to go through. But I want to make sure they're empowered to do that, because they might have funds that they want to put towards this, but they don't know that they could and how to get it there. And I think that's part of what we have to sort of connect some of the dots on for the directors, is make sure that they know the avenues early enough to make the decisions that can actually help them. And I mentioned the change management structure, because I know in LA County, we would not have been successful with LRS implementation if we had not built up a pretty significant change management team at the county level, working also with the project, but also, at the county level, because we went through, just less Calhoun counties are going to go through, a significant change. The system looks nothing like your system looks like today. It didn't look anything like Leader did. And it did really require that level of change management at the ground. And counties may be willing or able to actually try to redivert some of their funds to create that, but they need to know how. We need to create some infrastructure to support them both centrally at the project and not think that it ends there. They may be able to do something, but we need to put some provisions in that kind of get them there.
Yeah, Michael, this is John. So for the May meeting, we're going to go over our budget, what's been allocated and what it's appropriate, what we've been approved to have the counties spend that money on, and what they can do from data cleanup to support staff from both the CalWIN budget, the CalSAWS budget, where we're at on that. There's a number of CRFIs out right now to see if money needs to be reallocated. Money still needs to be claimed as we come into the end of the fiscal year. So Holly and her team have been doing that analysis, and we will put together what it's appropriate to be spent on and not spent on. Specifically in regards to the ad hoc reporting, the county purchase that's on there, that is not something that's funded directly by the project budget. We're trying to empower the counties to be able to do that. If a county can use their CalWorks allocation or something else like that to be able to do that county purchase using another funding mechanism, it is outside of the project budget. We just wanted to be able to say there's a mechanism to be able to do that. So like Laura said, the education, the exposure to the data model, the education on the data model to say what needs to be refactored, what's the work that needs to be done, to scope that work and see if the county can do that on their own with their own resources, or whether they're going to have to purchase those resources is what we've put out there. But in regards to the flexibility of the budget and reporting out on that, Holly and her team's been working with the fiscal managers, and we're going to have a little bit more of a deep dive report in May here on where we stand as we come towards the end of the fiscal year. Holly, not to put you on the spot, is there anything you want to add to that?
You covered that, John. I will say, as you mentioned, there is funding, county support staff funding, and there is a funding for ancillary support that was intended for refactoring and retooling reports that could be potentially leveraged for this. Some of those decisions will need to be made at that county level, but I will go through a lot of those details in May. And I do share this information with your county fiscal contacts through our quarterly fiscal call and various other avenues. So more to come in May.
And Michael, if I could just follow up on this a little bit. I just feel compelled to talk about the reports a little bit. The reports are referred to as ad hoc reports. And I think that minimizes the importance of these reports for our counties. So part of what I'm hearing from well, let me talk about what we use reports for. Our reports, so we use reports in one way to look back, right? Were we on time? What's our timeliness? But the primary way we use what we call reports is for daily operations. Yeah. We use that information to assign cases and to manage our workflows. And you know, the nature of this work is just management of a massive amount of individual tasks, right? And those reports are vital and critical to our work. And my team is anxious about these reports because we haven't seen the data yet. We cannot think about refactoring these reports until we actually have that data. And we actually know what the reports are that are coming out of CalSAWS to be able to know what we're going to actually need to refactor and still do. So there's just more information we need before we can come back to the consortium and say, here's the help we need. Because so far we can't even make a very good assessment about it.
Yeah, and I think, Marla, it's a good note for us to take back how critical these reports are in the day-to-day operations in the county. And as part of that inventorying that Laura and I had talked about is to make sure that there's an awareness and understanding of what are those critical items that are used on a daily basis versus a monthly versus a quarterly versus annually, the frequency of their use, so that we can understand what that that critical importance is for each of the items. I understand that maybe ad hoc may characterize it as somebody's just trying to go answer a question, which is not, it sounds like what we're talking about here. So that's something that we can make sure that we note just as we go forward and as we're going through this exercise to inventory the reports.
I appreciate that. And let me make a comment about the daily reports. The daily reports, for the most part, are where we get our monthly and quarterly report data from. So if the daily reports aren't happening, we don't have the data we need for monthly and quarterly reports.
Got it. Yep.
Rachel, this is Laura. Marla, I just wanted to hop in because I'm personally in those weekly meetings and those sessions that we're walking through with your report folks. And we are looking through each of those reports that they currently are generating in an ad hoc fashion, and then taking a look at the existing CalSAWS reports to see if those reports still need to be generated in an ad hoc way, or could the 500 plus CalSAWS reports that already exist for the 40 counties could be leveraged in order to reduce the footprint and the amount of ad hoc reports that your team will need to refactor. So I think that's the most important first step here. And we've already had many sessions over the last several weeks as we continue, and it's tedious work, no doubt, but going through report by report and doing that comparison and seeing if there is a CalSAWS report that fits the bill, then let's remove that from the inventory. Let's identify that as a change management item so that the ISS team can then educate the end users to say, you used to access this ad hoc report over here. Post go live, you're going to access a new CalSAWS report, and this is the name of it, and this is where you can find that, and create not only an inventory of work for ad hoc developers, but also for change management, because we're finding that there are quite a few reports and daily operational reports that the other 40 counties need as well and are utilizing. Let's highlight those. Let's have a discussion about those. And that's what we've been doing with your folks over the last several weeks. So I definitely encourage, ongoing participation, and we're here to help and support and continue to work with your staff as we go through that entire inventory and create a spreadsheet of that information so that everybody in your county can have access to that and have a lot of clarity around what remains to be worked on and what already exists in CalSAWS. So we'll continue to keep the board updated on our progress across all of our counties in those activities. We agree it's extremely important.
And Marla, I want to recognize that your point is well taken, because I agree with it that a characterization as ad hoc, it really doesn't represent what this entirety is. It's a compilation of operational reports, and there are some ad hoc in there, but it's primarily operational support reports, and we'll need the vernacular to reflect that going forward, as well as the effort level, because we had a significant deep dive in LA County of trying to validate different reports, find out where we had duplication. Do we need to switch? All of that has to happen for 18 separate counties so that they all feel that they can operate when they come up and that they have the data they need. And whether or not the state reports being generated on a monthly basis is one thing. That's going to, we know the project's going to take care of that, but leading up to that, every day of the month, how they're managing the operations on the ground is critically important to the success of this implementation. So. Becky, you have your hand up?
I do, thank you.
Oh, you're not on mic.
No worries, thank you. Well, not CalWIN, but I certainly agree that we need to make sure that those supports in the comments of my other directors that have gone before me and making sure that our CalWIN counties have the support that they need to be able to transition and go live in a smooth fashion that works for them. And I just wanted to clarify on the batch reports on the 237. I appreciate, first, let me just say that I really appreciate that you're being proactive and looking at what that load is for all the counties and what that's going to be in your testing and work over. But I wanted to find out if the delays are going to result, if they're also resulting in further exceptions are just requiring more time in those delays? So are they kicking out more cases that we're going to have to manually process if that ends up going live at some point with those delays, or is it just taking more time?
In this case, it would be taking more time versus creating more exceptions.
Okay.
Okay, any other comments or questions on this from our board members or other county directors on the call? Okay, this is going to be something we're going to continue to keep diving in deeper and getting clearer and clearer. We want to empower these directors with the information they need to act. So I think that that message is clear, and that we'll keep using that as our kind of guiding light on this. Any public comment on this particular presentation item? Okay, then we will go ahead and move on down our agenda. We're slightly behind, but we will get us back on track on this Friday.
Okay, Michael, I've got this agenda topic as well, and this is the CalSAWS migration final acceptance preview. And to set the context for the JPA, the purpose of the CalSAWS migration final acceptance is to confirm that as you look at that conversion event that occurred in September, that we've met the requirements associated with it, that we're meeting the performance requirements, and that we've addressed the non-cosmetic defects related to the C4 counties migration. This is a preview in the fact that we will be reviewing initial results for the month of April, and we plan on coming to the board in the month of May to ask for final acceptance, or potentially a dispensation from Project Director Boulay regarding the acceptance. And the outcome of this really is from a perspective of releasing an interim milestone payment for that CalSAWS work. If we move on to the next slide, and put it the overall context of where we started here. So from a CalSAWS conversion perspective of the 39 counties onto the CalSAWS platform, that initiated on March 4th when we started the CalSAWS DD&I project. System design deliverables were completed in October of 2020. The C4 UAT completed in August of 2021. And we conducted the training and OCM activities delivered to the C4 users from an overall project perspective. On September 23rd, we started the conversion event and brought the 39 counties on, and they were using the system starting on September 27th, 2021. We sunset the C4 system in September of 2021 and decommissioned the data centers that the system was hosted in December. 40 counties have been using the system for over 6 months, and we believe we've reached the point of stability to where we're bringing forward the discussion around acceptance for the CalSAWS project. So we're in the process of going through and conducting the final acceptance period for 30 consecutive days. We're going to have a look back today over the previous 30 days, but it'll be during the May JPA when we'll have the 30-day acceptance period. And so we plan on coming to the board on the 13th for that discussion. This is an interim milestone. So this is for the CalSAWS in the original 39 counties. We will have a similar process after the CalWIN counties come over as well. And so those cutovers are occurring on the from October of 2022 through October of 2023. And we expect to be discussing the final CalWIN conversion acceptance in 2024 after the successful completion of all the CalWIN county migrations. If we move on to the next slide, please. So just to hit the highlights, on the September 27th, we had 18,000 C4 users migrate to CalSAWS. Systems currently supporting 40 counties and over 34,000 users, and over 11 million residents are benefiting from the services that the CalSAWS application suite is providing. We've completed updates to the CalSAWS online help and configured and installed the learning management system for CalSAWS migration training materials for training in the 39 counties. We completed the cutover and we're able to 6 hours ahead of schedule. And then we provided the post-deployment support officially through December 17th, and we still continue to provide support. It included 445 total requirements, 71 contract deliverables, 978 SCRs deployed via releases 1911 through 2107, and over 500,000 work hours worked. Dan, I think I'll invite QA to provide some perspective here as well.
Yeah, just a brief context on how QA is involved for each of those contracted deliverables. The 71, we have an assessment. For those SCRs, they're part of our independent test that occurs in parallel with system test. For the hours worked, our PMO team does a monthly review of the work plans. Most importantly, for the donut here, the 445 total, that count comes out of our requirements tracking tool at the project known as JIRA. It's much more than just a simple checkbox that it's in. Those requirements were loaded in 2019 and they're tracked throughout the project life cycle. As they are in designs, they get a little check that they are in plan, and as they are confirmed to be deployed to production, they're closed out. So QA has gone into that tool and done an assessment, came up with the same count, and we're also in the process of confirming the artifacts, in other words, like test outcomes and screen prints associated to those requirements. The overall project count of requirements is higher, and we have also confirmed that those other requirements are related to additional activities and requirements required for the CalWIN go live, which has not yet been completed, of course, as well as things like imaging and call center that are part of other contracted work.
Thank you, Dan. Let's move on to the next slide. So the CalSAWS final acceptance deliverable will include the 30-day review period of our performance requirements, the outstanding non-cosmetic defects, as well as a summary of key lessons learned and recommendations for improvement to the CalSAWS software. We will be including an updated requirements traceability metrics, as well as a report on the status of the C4 counties migration requirements from the DD&I statement of requirements. Informational items that we'll cover briefly outside of the scope of this acceptance period includes the imaging and accessibility assessment, the update on the CalWIN migration, and ongoing maintenance and operations. If we move to the next slide. So overall, if you look at the performance of the CalSAWS system for March of 2022, we had high availability or perfect availability, response times, and overall from a system parameter and usefulness, it is meeting all SLAs. We had 2 misses that I'll be spending more time talking about, and that is around the monthly help desk diagnosis time on requests that were submitted through the ServiceNow ticketing tool, as well as an incident with the availability of the CalSAWS training environments. Dan, do you want to comment from a QA perspective on the SLAs?
Sure. There's a little column here called QA with the same sort of check marks. That work is representation of looking through the logs associated to each of these SLAs, the 20 listed. You see 2 that are marked green. That simply means we agree that those 2 are not met. Arnold's going to provide details on the next slide of how close they got and the measures taken up on those 2 items.
Thank you, Dan. Let's move to the next slide, please. So there were 2 items, as I talked about before, that we did not meet, and that was around the monthly help desk diagnosis time, where the target is roughly 98% of the tickets completed within that SLA versus our actual performance of 81% or 81.5%. On addition, on the second one, that we had an incident on March 9th on the training environment where it was unavailable for 55 minutes. I will be double clicking on both of those in the upcoming slides. So if we move on to the next slide, please. So first we'll start with the service desk diagnosis time. So out of the 3,288 tickets closed in March, 613 did not meet the SLA targets. If we look at those 3,288, approximately 50% were related to the user request for information rather than for system-related defects. Further drilling down, we saw roughly 27% of the tickets pertain to imaging, 54% pertain to the CalSAWS application. The remainder was related to some of the ancillary services and such as the network. Of the 613 tickets that missed the SLA, approximately 30% were eligibility related. And what we did in going through the analysis, those are some of the tougher tickets to analyze, in the fact that that eligibility functionality is complex and and in some cases requires the agents or the support staff to go through and recalculate what had happened to determine if there was an issue or if it was an explanation on system functionality. Approximately 67% of those 613 tickets were requests for additional information and procedures, and were not related to a system error, or we were unable to recreate the issue. So from an action plan perspective, there are a couple items that we are going to be addressing from an overall project perspective. One is to conduct refresher and awareness training for the county and project service desk staff for quicker response time to the county users, as well as we're going to identify trends in the ticket data, as I went through with the high level, and use that to create additional materials, either through CITs, through training vignettes, or videos that we can distribute to the user community for the commonly asked questions, and help reduce that flow of system question related activities. In addition, the project is mobilizing a strike team around overall communications. And with that, I'd like to invite Gretchen to join us to talk through that.
Good morning, Arnold. Thank you. So as a common theme, the members will be hearing this morning with different updates, the emphasis on communication. So we wanted to take a moment to provide some awareness that as a proactive response to county feedback, the CalSAWS project has recently launched a communication strike team. This team will focus on the continued evolution of communications initiatives. So examples of that, conducting experiments on different communication methods that help to assist the counties in sharing project information in a more user-friendly format that can easily be shared and consumed by end users. That's definitely a focus area. Some of these experiments will focus on how to evolve complex communications around system changes or enhancements, areas such as imaging, reports, correspondence. We'll also be exploring options for evolving current communication methods that counties are familiar with, such as CITs and the web portal. So to identify and oversee the effectiveness of these experiments, we will be conducting interactive county focus sessions. A CRFI was released on the 19th, introducing the first session. We are requesting up to 3 participants per county, and we definitely encourage that participation. The CRFI included details on the session focus areas, but also intentionally emphasized the interactive format. So we'll be doing some level of information sharing, but more importantly is the dialogue and the interaction feedback that we're getting from our county partners. Preparation materials will also be sent to the individuals identified in advance of the session to help prepare and socialize some of the concepts that we'll be discussing. Session will be scheduled for May 25th. In addition to the county communication being a definite area of focus, the team's also working with CWDA and the committee chairs to establish a process to ensure that questions or CalSAWS issues that might come up during the CWDA meetings, that we're assigning those, addressing them, and following up in a efficient and effective manner. So this is a priority initiative for the CalSAWS project. So in that respect, we'll be bringing back regular updates on strike team progress to both PSC and JPA on a go forward. So Arnold, thank you for the opportunity and the pause here to create some awareness from a broader communication effort from a project perspective.
Thank you, Gretchen. If we move on to the next slide. So this is the data that we were pulling to drive that analysis to identify those trends around those communication areas, or where we can enhance our communication or use guides or training materials as well, in addition to looking at just the general flow of the tickets through the system so that we can get answers quicker to our end users. If we move to the next slide, please. So now I'll move over to the trainee environment. And as you can see from the data here, we had the one instance where we had the 55 minutes of unavailability. And that was due to a technical issue to where the environment ran out of space before we were able to, the technical team was able to intercede and add more space. As a result, we've reviewed our learning areas and thresholds, as well as changed the number of restore points that we have for the training environment. And between those two, we have avoided reoccurrence of that issue. We will continue to monitor this as we go forward into the month of April. We did have an issue in early April to where the training environment is actually shut down in the evening in order to save on AWS, Amazon processing costs for keeping the system running when nobody's on it. And the restart script failed to restart the database. And so as a result, an issue did occur to where the database came up later than what was targeted. So I'll cover more of those details in the May discussion. Can we move to the next slide, please? So our next steps for the May meeting are going to be the report on the performance results for the acceptance period, which will be the month of April. Provide an update on how we're doing on the monthly help desk diagnosis team, as well as a status update on the cutover for this weekend's imaging support, as well as we'll be able to report on the trending of the tickets that are being submitted through the former C4 counties. If the CalSAWS system is stable and continues to meet the SLAs and the help desk diagnosis time continues to exceed the targets, we may be requesting consortium executive director's discretion for the final acceptance. So that's setting the context for the discussion in the May period. If we move on. So the other component around the defects is the remaining defect that was associated with the CalACES implementation was resolved in the 22 April 18th release. And so that was in related to generated reports, and we were able to complete the system test and do the implementation. We know that there's still a lot of questions around the reports. And so what we have a topic that we'll be covering as an informational item today, in which we'll do a further deep dive. And then overall, as we continue to operate the system, implement functionality, in the event that additional defects arise, we will continue to be implementing defects and fixes to resolve those defects as support continues on. If we move to the next slide, please. So with that, Dan, I'll turn it over for QA commentary.
Thanks, Arnold. So this wrap up slide here shows what has been done to date for this April overall overview, and then the open boxes are what we will be working to complete for May. There's a specific requirement that ties to the CalACES migration final acceptance deliverable, which is the 40 county acceptance. And we have made it through a review of the deficiency logs, as well as the updates to the requirements traceability matrix that I described earlier. Between now and the May presentation, we'll make it through the summary of lessons learned and recommendations. And the top item here, of course, will be verification of the CalSAWS software is performed for 30 consecutive days as outlined below, without any other deficiencies other than inconsequential ones. And then go forward QA, even when this wraps, of course, will continue to be involved, go forward on the activities you see listed below across the various work streams on the project.
Thank you, Dan. Let's move to the next slide. So additional informational items will be the imaging topic update, as well as the update on the state fiscal reports. And we have special breakout topics for the agenda later on this morning. Let's move on to the next. And with that, Michael, I'll turn it back to you for questions.
I think one thing on this, Arnold, The accessibility testing, we have not gone over that. And and let's go to the next slide on accessibility testing. It came up during our CMS review. So we wanted to expose the board to this, let you know about what's going on the accessibility testing. It is not part of the final acceptance, but we think that it's important that the board know about these items. And we're going to track these and provide this information back to the board transparently. But we wanted to give you an update as we're talking about the acceptance criteria and what we're going through, that this is also another activity. So quickly, maybe Lisa can go through these items, and then we could break for the comments and questions on the entire portion of this. So Lisa, can you quickly go through this item?
Yes, sir. Good morning, everyone. Yeah, so as John mentioned, we have been doing an accessibility review of the core application. This stemmed from a recommendation by CMS in the operational review last year. You may recall, I know it's been a few months, but at the end of, I think, January, the board approved an agreement to bring on a third-party vendor to conduct this testing. So after that amendment approved, that was mobilized, and we have been working with the vendor to do this assessment. This assessment was time limited. We had to complete the assessment prior to the May 10 meeting with CMS, which is the follow-up meeting just around the corner here. So what we did is we focused on the high volume transactions and associated pages. So just over about 60% of the transactions are associated with around 40 pages in the application. Things like case summary, run EDBC, person search, journal pages, task pages, all in scope for the assessment that is in flight as we speak. In addition to that, we focused on some of the global components of the application. We have our global navigation, local navigation at the top, as well as the task navigation, and focused on pop-up windows, as well as the calendar, which appears on many pages anytime you search for input a date. So the assessment focused on, we're using Chrome, Edge browsers. It was automated. There was automated testing as well as manual keyboard testing to confirm that if you're using a keyboard only, that you can navigate through the application and avoid keyboard traps, as well as the automated screen reader. We know that many of our counties today do have screen readers and are using it along with the application. The intent was to get an updated assessment. With migration, we did add a lot of, we made a lot of updates to the system, as Arnold mentioned, since 1911, November 2019 release. So there have been a lot of updates. So we wanted to go through and complete this assessment to get updated information. Next slide, please. As I mentioned, it is in flight. For the most part, the findings to date are back-end changes to confirm unique IDs or frames. Frame titles. There were a couple of front-end changes, and we mentioned this to PSC yesterday, that as these move forward, we'll definitely be sharing them with the current user group. A couple of examples that come to mind on the calendar when you're picking a particular date. There was a color contrast ratio that we needed to update to make it more prevalent that that date had been picked. That was one example. We also have on the office schedule pages, if you are using a keyboard to go through that schedule, making sure that there's a tag that shows you what that color represents. There's a lot of different colors if you've ever seen that page, so a visual tag. And then finally, the other one is just a slight change to our online help icon. So those things have been remediated, and in a future release will be going out, but we will definitely have a CIT or some sort of material to our user group so they are aware of those changes that are coming. After this assessment is complete, we will be continuing. This is an ongoing effort. We will look to do the next set of pages to get us to over 80% of the transactions that occur in the system. That's targeted for the end of October. And as well as we're refreshing our tool set for the developers. So as we continue to add pages to the application or make modifications that they're going through, that testing early to confirm compliance there. And I will pause and hand back to Michael.
Thank you, Lisa. Thank you, Arnold. I'm really focused on making sure that we continue to have a focus on defect processing and making sure that that's done timely. So that's really huge to keep doing that. Also, the training environment availability almost becomes like a production environment when we have all the Calhoun counties going through their preparatory. So those focuses going forward are going to be huge even after sign off on the acceptance for the CalACES. So I'm glad to see the progress, but there'll be things that'll continue into our sort of operations mode that we're going to want to keep driving down, Arnold. And
That's
Dan,
correct.
from a QA standpoint as well.
Yes.
So thank you. Any other comments or questions from our board members, directors on the call, and state partners on this presentation?
Hey, Michael, this is Gilbert. I wanted to kind of ask a question about the service desk, and then I also have one about the training environment. The training environment one may be easier, so let me go ahead and ask that one. In regards to the chart back on that page, there was only just the 1 day showing a 55%, 55-minute downtime. But I guess part of my questions also would be, what about those days that we were having functionality issues with the copy and paste feature that was missing? Was that folded into any of these? I mean, the system was available, if you will, but it wasn't functioning the way it was. So I was just curious if it was or was not included into these numbers, and the reason if it wasn't.
So Gilbert, that was not included in these numbers, because if we look at this is around the up down of the environment with the definition, and that was the reason why they were excluded.
Okay, Arnold, but just in the future, we probably should have something else that reflects usability and whether or not the system is actually usable, whether it's up or not.
Yeah,
it can be a separate measure, but it should be reflected.
Yes.
We'll take that back specifically, and Dan, I'll ask QA to take a look at that. And then as we report back out in May, that we specifically address that question.
Thank you, Gilbert. It's a really good point.
And then thank you. And then to the next question about the service desk, and this is something that just came to my attention recently. So I don't have a lot of details per se, but I had recently learned as we were inquiring about some overdue applications and why they were overdue, and we were told it was because I was told it was because of trouble tickets. Then we go back and we dig and we find out that there was a lot of trouble tickets. That's maybe wrong term, but there were numerous trouble tickets that had been closed, and our staff was not aware that they were closed, and so they were not following up on the case to try to take action because they didn't realize it was closed. And so I know our RM Melissa had done some research and digging around and had found out the history as to when these tickets were closed, and maybe it's because we couldn't reach the employee, or maybe that the expectation was or assumption was that another fix addressed this trouble ticket, so there was no resolution. So I'm just curious in regards to the communication. I know there's some conversation earlier about communication efforts, but just communicating, if a trouble ticket was made, there needs to be a closure with the person who made it to some degree, I would think. So I'll leave that there. I don't really know it's something that we could, resolve right now, but it's just I gotta get those 2 cents out there to represent.
And Gilbert, it's a valid point around having a positive confirmation from the submitter prior to the closure of the ticket, having that communication. So that is part of the analytics that we're driving as well, and looking at this data to that, specifically for those items that if there wasn't an action taken, meaning that there wasn't a system defect associated with it, making sure that that end user has the information to understand what occurred, or here are the training tips or tricks or other things, or that communication that says if it was related to another defect, just to confirm that their original issue was resolved. So we are definitely looking at that as we're going through these analytics and that service desk performance.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah, and Arnold, and to Gilbert's point also, is we should make sure that there's a sort of like a redundancy chain in that as well, in case the user, the original submitter is no longer there, that the SPOC and the RMs are aware of this so that there can be follow-up.
Okay, we will capture that as well.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments on this particular presentation from our board members, directors, state partners? Okay, any public comment? Okay, we're going to move along. I believe, Rachel, you're up next.
I am, Michael, and I'm going to bring back an item that came as an action item from last month around what will be available to community-based organizations given the YBN cutover to Benefits Cal over this weekend. If we could go, I'm going to actually take this slide when we talk about the LA cutover around the communications, but wanted to get directly to what is the support and the impact. If we could go to the next slide. So wanted to give a little bit of an overview. And this cutover time has changed since we submitted this presentation. So wanted to give that as the backdrop. The cutover for YBN starts today at 1 p.m. for LA County. Originally, it was planned at 6 o'clock, and it has been moved earlier to be 1 p.m. today. And so for those community-based organizations that are looking for where they could go to still be able to request services for individuals for Medi-Cal and then also for the other programs, the message that's displayed on YBN is reflected what is here in the presentation, which is that effective Monday, Benefits Cal will be the new system that they will use. That for Medi-Cal related applications, the alternative site would redirect someone to Covered California. For CalFresh related applications, it would redirect individuals to Get CalFresh during that period of downtime. And then a message to denote that for CalWorks and for GR, that there would be a need to visit Benefits Cal when the system is up with LA converted on Monday. So this is what's going to be reflected, but I think that the short answer to it is, for those individuals that are in the that are 50 plus seeking Medi-Cal, that the information that will be available on YBN is that they can visit Covered California during the outage period to request or to complete an application. That's it, Michael.
Rachel, this is Laura. I just wanted to add in hot off the press. We did initiate both text messaging and replayed our email notifications to clients, letting them know about the time change to 1 p.m. today. And so that all was distributed out this morning. So I just wanted to highlight that for the group.
Perfect. And I'll just reinforce it, Laura, in when we get to the Benefits Cal LA cutover, there's a slide in there too. So I'll just make sure that I message that one too. Great.
Thanks, Rachel.
Sure thing.
Thanks, Rachel. Thanks, Laura. Any questions, comments from our board members, state partners on this? We cut over weekend. Any public comment on this? Okay. All right. We're going to move on to the next item then. Thank you, Rachel. Thanks, Laura. On to, looks like Keith is up.
It is. Thank you, Michael.
And Keith's up, and this is the one item where in the agenda, it really calls out Madera County, but really Madera County helped us sort of bring up more of a general concern that's out there. So this isn't specific to them. It's specific to a broader issue that the reports team is engaging on with all of the counties.
Yeah, and thank you for that, John. I want to thank Madera County, as well as Joe Mendoza, the regional manager for Region 4, meeting with us last week, because it gave us an opportunity to really dive into some of the details that Madera County was experiencing and then understand how that's affecting the other counties respectively. And so what we were able to do last week in those discussions is take in that information, and then correlate it to either known tickets or known defects that we have in the system, and or identify if it was a new item that we needed the county to then submit a ticket to get more details on. And it's always important for us to gather the details via the tickets, because it gives us a couple of things. It gives us the detailed information that we're really looking for, and it also allows us to do the triaging and then communicating back to the counties respectively. So that's really important. Just as a note here, some of the things that we have been doing since the C4 counties have gone live is we initiated the state and fiscal reports meetings. And initially, right after the go live of C4, we were doing these on a weekly basis. Right now, we're doing these on a bi-weekly, every other week. And we look at, or we discuss a number of things, the current and upcoming system change requests. These are updates to, or I should say, new and or enhancements to reports respectively, as well as any defects that are outstanding and when those are prioritized so the counties can understand when they can see those. And in some cases, it requires us to rerun reports, and we also make sure we provide that information to them as well. We provide a various number of updates to reports. But what's even more important for these discussions is that we're able to listen to the counties and really understand what they're experiencing. Once again, when we hear those things, it gives us some understanding that allows us to correlate. Is it something that we're already aware of, or is it something that we need more information on? What we do with this is everything I just mentioned, but we also want to be able to communicate back to the counties with everything that we had discussed in these sessions, and we do this via the meeting minutes. Now, the one thing that we have been, we will be doing here very shortly, I should say, is getting some feedback from our customer engagement team. We want to provide some enhanced communication to the counties. And what we're going to do is we're going to restructure the meeting minutes to look at things like it's a lot of the information that's already in there, but structuring it in a way where we can focus in on what's in production today that has resolved issues, current and recent issues, what's upcoming, what are some of the resources, meaning are there links to training that we can include that will allow the counties to help self-serve to a certain degree. So we're trying to put this information together in a manner that will allow the counties or the PPOCs or the directors to pick this up and go, okay, I understand what's going on. I can use this as I'm walking around and having conversations with individuals who are having issues with reports, and I can let them know that this issue right here, it looks like it's going to be resolved in X release. So it'll allow them to, our intent here is to allow them to, once again, help self-serve. The last thing I'll say here is we're going to continue on with these, the state and fiscal reports on a bi-weekly basis. We know right now we're supporting the C4 counties, and we'll continue to do that. We know that the Calhoun counties are right around the corner. We want to make sure that we're serving them as well. So we're going to continue on with this. And very last, any enhancements to this process, we're going to continue to do so. And those opportunities when we can meet with individually with counties, we'll take advantage of that.
And Keith, one additional item that came up during the project steering committee yesterday, that is sort of a helpful hint and a call for assistance from the counties, is a lot of times on especially fiscal reports, I think your enrollment and eligibility staff are used to putting in tickets and help desk processes and all of those types of things, and they're very used to that. Sometimes on the fiscal side of the house, they're not as used to calling in tickets or something else like that when they see an issue with a report or something else like that. So those tickets are sort of our lifeblood of looking at the particular issues, what people are experiencing, seeing if it's a training item or a defect within the system and things like that. And those fiscal staff may not be used to that. So sort of bridging that gap, we've asked the regional managers to engage on that. We've asked our project steering committee. So I just wanted to let our board members know about that as well. Michael, I think this is back to you.
It is.
Okay, thank you, Keith. Thanks for the additional clarification, John. Any
Certainly.
questions, comments from the directors or state partners on this? Okay. And John, thanks for the clarification around the Madera piece. I think that was important. Any public comment? Okay, then we'll move along to the next item. I think, Arnold, you come right back up with Rachel.
I do. So this is imaging readiness for the Los Angeles County go live this upcoming weekend. So overall, just to provide an update on where we are in the defects. In my previous discussions on the risk, we were talking about how a number of defects have been resolved that will improve the experience of the C4 counties, as well as be beneficial to Los Angeles County, as in the fact that they will have been resolved prior to the go live this weekend. The current status now is that we're at 100% complete on all items that were targeted for the 4/25 go live. There's still some defects that are going to be targeted for resolution post this weekend, and we're working with the Highland vendor to finalize what those dates look like for those. If we move on to the next slide. So if you look at the SEV2, the images stuck in OCR error queues, this was implemented 2 nights ago in production and validated to be working correctly in production. For the SEV3, the counting code not always being set at a point of capture. Upon looking at the logs, it looks like what happens on these is that there's a double submittal. So the caseworker is hitting the refresh button on the screen and or not letting the process complete. And as a result, it's causing an issue with the county code. This one is being referred to 2 modes. One is a CIT out to the county workers around avoiding doing the double submission. In addition, the Highland vendor is going to their product development and looking at what they can do from the software perspective to stop the resubmittal process if the button's been clicked once already. If we move to the next slide, please. There was a priority enhancement on the update of the document routing rule that went in on 4/19. And then we also implemented fixes that were identified in the early April performance test on the 15th and the 20th into production. If we move to the next slide, please. So just to refresh everybody's memory around what we were doing in run up to the Los Angeles County go live from a performance testing perspective to validate that the performance issues that the C4 counties were encountering were resolved, as well as making sure that when LA County comes on, which is in essence doubling the volume of transactions that are flowing through the system, we had an enhanced performance test that in early April. And that started with a 39 county load, and that's mimicking current production loads. Also had Benefits Cal submitting at 14,000 per hour. Then if you take a look at how we ramped up, we went to a 50% load up to a 66% load. And when I'm saying that that's of the 58 counties, that 66% actually represents full 39 county load plus Los Angeles County. So what we would be expecting on Monday, the 25th, after this weekend's conversion activities. In addition, we have Benefits Cal at 28,000, which is actually a couple orders higher than what's currently in production right now, because of the expected uptick that we expect with the Benefits Cal application. We expect those volumes to be higher than the current volumes for the Your Benefits Now portal, as well as what we're seeing on the C4 counties. So we gave more volume to that. If we move to the next slide, the results of the performance test were very strong. If you take a look at through the portal submission process, and this is documents that were being submitted by a Benefits Cal. So think of the use case of I am a caseworker, I have an applicant on the phone, they're submitting their documents through the Benefits Cal portal. What we were seeing is that those documents were linked to the case and viewable within 15 seconds. In many cases, it was sub-second. So it was less than 1 second from that point of submission to the point to where the caseworker could click on the document and pull it up and review it. Then it went through the rest of the task generation, and that occurred within 5 minutes. So a reminder, the document's fully viewable during that 5-minute period. And then ultimately it completes the processing and goes to archive within 30 minutes. So it's viewable within 15 seconds. It's updatable by the caseworker within 5 minutes, and that everything can be completed within 30 minutes. But the importance is it's viewable within that second, so the caseworker can continue to process the case and service the applicant. From a worker and kiosk submission perspective, we saw similar. So with the OCR bypass, so that's the optical character recognition or the brainware bypass. And the reason why you do that is because of the data that was already entered, but when the image was captured, or if it has a barcode on it because of being a CalSAWS generated form. What we saw was, again, it was viewable within 15 seconds, many times within 1 second. Tasks were generated within 15 minutes, and the documents were archived within 30 minutes. So the caseworker had visibility to that document within seconds of submission. Same thing happens with the OCR workflow. So this is when the documents that are going through the brainware product. Again, what we saw was that it was visible to the caseworker within 15 seconds, many times under 1 second. Tasks were generated within 30 minutes, and then it was archived within 50 minutes. So these were significant improvements over what was being seen in production, as well as in the previous performance tests. If we move to the next slide, please. So the other component as we looked forward to or look forward to the LA Go Live green light process is around the training readiness. And so these dates, this data was as of April 13th, and we're sitting at 85% completion rate. If we move to the next slide, we're actually seeing that we're hot better than what's here. So overall completion on the training is sitting above the 90% target. So DPSS is sitting at 92%. And then there's and that's really where the knowledge workers are, the case workers who are going to be the heavy users. So they're at 92% completion, which is above the target of 90%. On the imaging light curriculum, those are more of the supervisors. That is now sitting at 77% with a target of 85%. I'm sure that there's been even more movement of the training completion, but from a county readiness perspective, it's a strong indicator that we're exceeding the training completion targets.
Arnold, this is Michael. So those numbers of 92%, you're giving us the latest, even above what was put on the slide, right?
That's right, because this slide was produced a week ago in preparation. So these are the numbers I just quoted are coming out of yesterday's update.
Thank you.
So if we move on, and from a DCSF or DCFS perspective, we're still sitting at roughly 78% completion, so very close to that 80%. And there's a potential we could hit that 80% before the go live weekend. If we move on. So then the other component of green light readiness is around the import of the Los Angeles images. And so that's from the legacy system into the Highland system. This weekend, we are basically on track, meaning that the system's up to date. There will be a final import that occurs as part of this weekend's activities that will capture the last couple of days of image processing activity within Los Angeles County. So from an import perspective, we are also in a green status. If we move to the next slide, please. So shifting focus from Los Angeles County perspective, which is from a system performance perspective, and we've actually had validation from the other 39 C4 counties with the production that they are seeing similar response times as to what we saw in the performance test. The system is proving to be ready for the Los Angeles County go live. the Calhoun counties will also benefit from this. And so as we will just hit upon the Calhoun readiness as far as the imaging prep, because we're, as I mentioned before in the risk discussion, we're taking the lessons learned out of the C4 county migrations and LA county migration and taking those lessons learned so that they can be applied by Contra Costa. And so we've been, the overall status, and this is of the 13th, is that 71% of the export loads have been processed and they'll be ready to be uploaded to the Snowball device. The county has approved moving forward with security guard changes. And basically they're making progress on that validation of that flow between exporting the images out of the legacy system and test imports into the Highland and CalSAWS imaging system. Only reason why we're leaving amber is from a precautionary perspective, as we haven't completed the process. Right now, we aren't seeing any blockers, and so we have confidence that they'll complete on the 21st. On the next slide, please. So from a Placer County perspective, again, we were seeing error rates of roughly 2% on the exports and import process. So that had to take a pause to diagnose that. We have since received word that those have been corrected and that the testing process has resumed. So with that, still in amber status, just monitoring mode, believe that we'll hit the 5/27 date that is listed here. We move to the next slide, please. And then from a YOLO perspective, YOLO is in process and overall green status. We move on to the next. So then we talk about wave 2 in Santa Clara. And really the point on Santa Clara is we're in the preparation steps for that testing process. And we're really looking at trying to use what's called the over-the-wire transfer mechanism versus the Amazon Snowball, which is the Amazon Snowball is basically an external hard drive that you export the images to, you ship it to Amazon, they mount it in the data center, they import it into the cloud. Versus the over-the-wire transfer is using a network connection so that you transfer the images directly from the system over the network to the cloud. And so we're looking at enabling that process for Santa Clara based upon their volumes, just as a more reliable transfer mechanism. So the reason why Santa Clara is currently amber is really something that there's been some delays in some of the precursor steps there. There's more than enough time to make up for this. So again, it's a precautionary amber, and we believe that they will be on track. Let's move to the next slide, please. Right. And from a Tulare perspective, the county's completed the initial export on April 4th, so they're in a green status. Next slide, please. So I'll take a moment to also review the Highland. So there is a contract between Highland and the consortium for the imaging solution. There are 3 metrics that are contained in that contract from an SLA perspective, and this was, I'll review the performance against SLAs for the month of March. So from that perspective, the first SLA has to do with what's called rendering. So if a caseworker clicks on the image and then it pulls up and displays on their workstation, that's what's called rendering. And so the SLA is built around that. A 70 kilobyte image will be visible in under 2 seconds. The 99% of those renderings did complete within that 2-second time frame for the month of March, which exceeds the 90% monthly target, or the monthly target as defined. So that's about 2.6 million 70K rendition requests. That 20,000 of those, or 20,804, took longer than the 2 seconds. If we move to the next slide. The next SLA is around the database transaction. So this is how quickly the Highland is updating their database. 733 million queries over the month of March. 499,000 took longer than 1 second, which was the SLA. That translates into a 99.94% target, and or performance against a target of 90%. So in that perspective, the SLA was met. So then on the final metric is really around monthly brainware processing percentage with a target of 90%. And that is that brainware will process 90,000 pages in less than or equal to an hour. The reason why these are set as not applicable or not NA is that we have yet to receive or hit a volume of 90,000 submissions per hour. And that's when this SLA comes in and is actually calculated. So we are less than 90,000. They are being processed in the hour with the performance changes that have been made. And however, we have yet to, this SLA triggers at that 90,000 threshold. So this is something that I think is a candidate for being revisited in the consortium's ongoing discussions with Highland. John, I saw you.
Just to let the board know, yesterday at the project steering committee, when we went through the acceptance criteria as well as those items like imaging that are outside of the acceptance, the project steering committee wanted to have a little bit more of a historical view of the SLA performance, because there has been a significant improvement. But I think some of that, some information on past performance, where it's improved and where it stands. So that's an action item to project steering committee. And we could also bring that back to the board. So you're not just looking at a 1 month snapshot, maybe it's a 3 or 4 month to show some of the trends. Some of the improvements are where we're at this particular time. So, and then on this particular one, of course, there's some headroom as we bring in the Calwin counties, and this is an SLA that probably at a certain point in time needs to be revisited to see if we're going to hit that 90,000 per hour, and acknowledging that there's many documents appropriately that we have bypassed brainware on that is bringing down that count per hour down. And in light of that, the consortium team will be engaging in conversations with Highland to see how we make adjustments to this SLA. We just have not got to that point yet. It's been an all hands on deck to be able to improve the production performance as we speak, and the team's made good progress. Michael, I think that brings us to the end of our imaging update, right, Arnold?
I believe so.
Okay.
Thank you, Arnold. As everybody can see, there's been tremendous progress, and it was well worth all of our efforts to make sure that we took the extra time to get this performance to where it's at. We expect the system to continue to be improved in terms of performance for as more counties come on board. And John, just to the point of, I think all the SLAs that we were looking at need to be revisited in context too as well. Maybe because they're set at like 90% and we're at like 99, maybe they're better aligned with the other higher percentages we have in the system SLAs to revisit it over time, because as we grow, we want to improve. So that's one comment I had. And then I just want to thank everybody for working together on getting this performance. This was really critical to us in LA County. And it is going to benefit the folks that are on the system as well, like our partners in neighboring counties like San Bernardino and Riverside and the other 37 C4 counties that are up on it. And then we got to continue to keep improving the performance in each one of those criteria where we have certain timed estimates, because any improvement there is going to be an improvement to public service. So beyond that, I'm going to go ahead and open up to any kind of questions or comments from our board members and state partners on this presentation. Okay, any public comment? Okay, without that, then we'll go ahead and move on to the next item. And I believe Rachel comes back up with Calwin Wave 1 discussion.
Before we get to that one, Michael, first I wanted to give just a benefits Cal readiness for LA County. So we're excited. We can't skip over this one. This is
that's fine. I got to get my agenda up to date.
All right. So just to give a little bit of update on where we are. So we received the green light go on readiness for bringing LA County on as our 40th county onto Benefits Cal. Two things I wanted to point out relative to the completeness here. This was as of 4/19, we were complete with everything. We did add, as Laura had pointed out, we had planned our communications to be completed by the 19th and had executed against getting those communications out by the 19th, but have added in one additional communication, which was completed this morning, that went out to customers to make sure that they understood that the timing associated with the cutover would start at 1 p.m. today, in less than 2 hours now. That it would start at 1 p.m. today instead of 6 p.m. So that's one thing that I wanted to mention relative to this. And then the team is right now working on promoting these changes into our staging environment. So they ran through that the community-based organization initial load, had found actually a couple of items that we needed to work to get updated on that initial load list, because we were looking to accommodate some additional community-based organizations into that first time initial load. The staging process worked. It found exactly what we needed to do. We updated them, and the team is ready for this go live over the coming weekend. So those are the 2 points I just wanted to highlight on the dashboard. If we could go to the next slide, and Laura had talked about this a little bit. If folks remember, we had postponed the communications for Benefits Cal pending the outcome of the performance test for imaging. So we have sent out communications to customers via multiple communication channels, via email, SMS, as well as for those users that were using the mobile application, that was their primary source. So they got a push notification to let them know about the transition from YBN to Benefits Cal. So in addition to these communications here, I mentioned there was an additional one that was sent out this morning that provided that update from 6 p.m. to 1 p.m. today around the cutover. And one other thing to note is that we did send out these communications in Spanish as well. So individuals that did have their preferred language in Spanish, the communications went out in that language as well. And then the next slide we had already talked about. So Michael, I'm going to turn it back over to you. This is just the message that's going to display, and we covered that in the agenda item earlier around where would people go to access Medi-Cal applications during the cutover window. So I will turn it back over to you.
Okay, thank you, Rachel. This is very timely. Any questions, comments from our board members, state partners on this update? Okay, any public comment on that update? Okay, thank you, Rachel. And then I think you are up for CalWIN Wave 1. Is that?
I am, yes. Now for the CalWIN Wave 1 implementation. One thing I wanted to start maybe framing this is, I had mentioned earlier in the Gantt charts that our Gantt charts and on the risk for 262, that starting next month is when we're going to be presenting the dashboards. So the view is going to change when we come to the board next month from what you're going to see today. And that is going to be reporting progress against each of these major areas of where the counties are relative to Wave 1. But wanted to walk through a couple of things that have taken place. We talked about the county-specific work plans have gone through a series of updates, and Abby and I had talked about that earlier. We are going back with the Wave 1 counties to do walkthroughs for those counties that want to have a deeper dive into them. And Contra Costa, as we also talked to them about this last week as well. So we're going to be doing a deeper dive into each section to make sure that there's an understanding of each of the areas of the work plan, what needs to be done, if there's questions that we need to take back with any of the project SMEs that we have them included in that conversation. The readiness checklists are I'll call it a byproduct of that. Those were updated as well, and there are things that are going to be coming out to future Wave counties for their readiness checklists. The TOS team meetings for Wave 1 have been ongoing. Contra Costa had requested a weekly meeting with their TOS team members, and the other two counties had monthly, and we do anticipate that frequency is going to be dependent on county need. And it may increase the closer that we actually get to go live. But that's something that we're working on right now with the Wave 1 counties, is the ongoing TOS team meetings. Wave 2 is going to start later on this month, and then Wave 3 will happen in terms of getting their work plan by the end of April. So we're hitting those dates relative to getting the work plan and the checklist out. The big piece on this one is just making sure that there's an awareness and understanding of what's contained in them. And then what the impact is from a county resource needs to be able to support the work plan that the counties need to prepare for their readiness related activities. Okay, we could move to the next slide. I want to give an update, I think, on 3 particular items of what's coming up relative to system readiness for the Wave 1 counties. And I wanted to focus on this bottom area. UAT is coming up relatively soon in June. And right now, coming up in the next 30 days, the counties are going to be involved in preparation activities. And that's everything from making sure that there is that there's training that they have taken, to making sure that the processes around how UAT is going to be conducted, the tools that will support it, all of that education and awareness for preparation for the execution is where the counties are going to be spending some time in the next 30 days. We have ongoing data cleansing opportunities within the county that leverage what's called a case review guide. There have been 3 of them that have been provided to the county so far, and they are ongoing as we go through mock cutovers for conversion. There will be additional data cleansing items that will come out of that effort as well. Arnold had talked about the imaging sample testing, so I don't want to focus on that so much. The 4th item is that around the call center, or the contact center rather, getting confirmation of the flow of how those calls are going to be routed through the contact center is coming up within the next 30 days to make sure that there is confirmation as to that flow, so that it can then be configured and tested before go live. And then lastly, and we have talked about the refactoring report prioritization, and here, Marla, it's not noted as ad hoc, but it's more broadly around reports, that that prioritization around the refactoring effort and the county definition of whether the counties can support it is something within that next 30 days for the Wave 1 counties. All right, if we could move to the next slide, I'll give a little bit of a what's the 30 days look like from a technical readiness. 4 areas here. The help desk effort right now with the counties is looking at what needs to be done with the help desk team between the county and the project, and making sure that the county site plans are defined. So there's an awareness of what needs to happen from a preparation and an execution around the county site plans. The second area is that the help desk team from the project is having ongoing sessions with the counties so that they can flesh out those help desk processes where there are going to be connections between the county help desk and the project help desk. So that's the second item. The third is that there's making sure that we're getting the requirements associated with the county business and application confirmed within this month, and those are coming out of the requests for information through the CURFEs that have been submitted, and we're collecting that information. So updates to that will be happening over the next 30 days. And then the last item from a real technical perspective here is to make sure that there is awareness of what those IP addresses are within the counties, so that we can make sure that people can get connected to the system as we move forward. So that's it from what the look ahead on the technical side of things. Let's move on. If we go to the next slide on the org side of things, which is our last area that I wanted to walk through. We talked quite a bit about change discussion guides in risk 270, where the counties for Wave 1 have been participating in closeout activities to inventory the process changes. And going forward, there will be a set of activities that will be coming up with the county to make sure that we're getting the configurations that are critical for things like task management, for document routing defined, so that we have those defined and understood as to what the configuration effort is going to be. The next 30 days also brings ongoing change discussion guide reviews, as I had mentioned earlier. We have readiness surveys that are conducted at certain intervals, 3 months apart up until go live. So our next one is the T-6 survey. And so the counties are involved in making sure that the information that's being collected will be helpful in understanding where the counties are relative to their communications around the readiness for change. The ongoing training reviews, we have the instructor-led training curriculum that continues to be developed, and the counties are involved in that activity. And lastly is, it mentioned in the very beginning for the Gantt charts that the counties have received for wave 1 their training plans that are county specific and are reviewing that. And we're working now on confirming logistics around training, specifically around facilities and making sure that we have laptops and printers set up within the counties. So that's what we've got upcoming from an organizational side of things. If we can move to the next slide, I think I'm going to hand it back to Michael.
Okay, Rachel, lots and lots going on. So thank you very much for that overview. Any questions or comments from our directors or state partners? Okay. Any public comment on that presentation? Okay, we'll go ahead and move on. I believe we have migration contingency planning coming next with Wendy leading that.
Hi, good morning, everyone. All right, if you can get the next slide. So we want to talk about risk 268 and the mitigation and contingency planning. So I know that many of you have seen this risk over and over, but I just want to review it again just for setting some context. So this risk is all about implementation readiness, both from a project and county perspective, and their ability to be on track to meet their respective exit criteria by the key trigger dates that we've set up for them. If they can meet those key trigger dates, then the CalSAWS cutover for wave 1 could be delayed or require significantly greater support to have the counties through those outstanding issues. So if you go to the next slide. So just again, as a reminder, that risk 268 is that umbrella risk that covers 8 individual risks, everything from batch performance, imaging scalability and performance, county readiness, converted data test, county imaging migration readiness, the GAGR UAT, and county data validation, report refactoring and ancillary system timelines, and change discussion guides. A lot of things going on, a lot of things that are interrelated as well. So what we're looking at with this one is, are there mitigation steps to be taken if any of those turn to an issue? Now, some of those, each one of those have their own mitigation strategy that they're employing. But if there's something that where one of them turns to an issue and it has to be shifted out in schedule, there are so much interrelated activities among them that we have to consider the holistic approach and how do we shift out everything collectively. So that's why we're looking at what are the mitigations that we can take to keep from having major schedule shifts, as well as exploring some contingency options if we need to go down that path. So we go to the next slide, please. All right, so let's talk first about risk mitigation. This you'll see a giant watermark across it called, for draft. One of the risk mitigations that we're exploring at this time is shifting Contra Costa from wave 1 to wave 2. We're in discussions right now with Contra Costa, a lot more to happen before that, any actions are taken. But we're just going to want to walk through what this shift to Contra Costa would mean, for Contra Costa would mean. So really we'd be shifting from wave 1, which is October 22, to February of 23. With regards to where they are now in the preparation process, we've already prepared a lot of the converted data. So that converted data would still appear in UAT. Right now we have Placer, YOLO, and Contra Costa, as well as the 40 CalSAWS County data going into UAT to support that effort. There would be 4 additional months for Contra Costa to be able to prepare for cutover, as well as a project to support them. And then we would be taking some of that support that would be given to Contra Costa for cutover and really giving that to Placer and YOLO to make sure that they have the best experience possible. We do recognize that this would delay the Benefits Cal functionality for Contra Costa customers and the CBOs 4 months as well. But we are thinking that this could be a positive change. And I see John's come on if you want to add something to this, John.
Yeah, and I'm sure that Marla's going to want to come on as well. We met with Marla and her team this week in a good conversation. And again, this is still in the exploration phase. I think Contra Costa is looking at some benefits for this on how they're getting ready. I think there's some real benefits to the project and using this as a risk mitigation, not a contingency, as a risk mitigation to be able to go forward. And really, we're going to learn a lot by bringing Placer and YOLO live. We went through risk after risk today, and we think that we could overcome those risks with really boots on the ground for Placer and YOLO and working with them on those particular items. So we wanted to bring this to the board, let you know that these conversations are in place. We're also opening up conversations with Placer and YOLO about this potential move of Contra Costa County to let them know what this means. And I think it's very positive what it means to Placer and YOLO. And then again, having that 4 months and really having this help us mitigate so that we don't get into a contingency process as we go forward. And Marla, I don't know if there's anything that you wanted to jump in on and talk about on this.
Yeah, thank you, John. I would like to take a minute or two here to say a few things. So I just started at Contra Costa last week, and I want to start by expressing a lot of gratitude to the Contra Costa team who was ready to provide me a very thorough briefing on where we are and brought me right up to speed on this. Like John said, we did meet with them yesterday to talk through this. We recognize it's a pretty significant change for us and for other counties as well. Just to kind of briefly let you know and be transparent about what the challenges are that we're having. A lot of it is really just related to compression for us in the time frame. So there's a number of things that were just identified on the last few slides that are coming online. And some of those things are coming online at this point for all Calhoun counties, which is great. For us, they're coming online now, and it makes our final preparation kind of compressed. And the areas where we've been experiencing some challenges are in our to-be processes. We are having to kind of go back and look at some of our to-be processes as we learn more about the functionality of CalSAWS. It's already been mentioned about change review guides that we have some challenges with. The report refactoring has been mentioned. The timing of UAT is feeling a little late to us in terms of our timing, and the comprehensiveness of our work plan is something that we're still working on. So a lot of those have already been talked about today, and that is really what we're experiencing. I just want to say that I'm very grateful for the partnership with CalSAWS. This is something that we are all doing together, and individually as counties, we need to succeed, but we will all succeed together. And so, I'm just really grateful that we're able to work through this. I just want to note that as we have been talking through this and thinking about this in Contra Costa and with the consortium, we have considered a lot of impacts to this. We've thought about a lot of the impacts about this change, pro and con impacts. But I recognize that there are potential impacts for other counties too that we may not have thought of or considered. And today I'm actually looking forward to hearing any responses or impacts or discussion from my colleagues in other counties.
Thank you, Marla. And I know that Santa Clara is not on today. They expressed some, I think, concerns about that. We've talked with their director, Angela Shing. She's had a couple asks. They are committed to staying in Wave 2. And we've talked about those same concerns that you've brought up in Contra Costa County about how we could be more streamlined in answering questions directly. About the work plan, about the change discussion guides, how we can do that so that a very robust Wave 2, that everybody is prepared. So we've been reaching out to Santa Clara to make sure that collaboration is taking place. Both Diane and I are going to be having a follow-up meeting with them in the next couple of weeks. We've sent some things. We've been examining some things on how they might be able to have some converted data available to them longer and those types of things. So we're going to be working with them, but they've stated that they're fully committed to staying in Wave 2. And we owe a few conversations with Placer and YOLO, but we really do feel like this is going to be very positive for them because we're looking at putting a number of folks on the ground during that cutover period to really help and provide that that additional support as we move in this direction. So again, this is a risk mitigation step that we're looking to take with Contra Costa. Contra Costa has their own reasons for also looking at that, but I think there's also project reasons to be able to do that. So I appreciate Marla and her team engaging in this conversation with us. And I think there's more to come on that. We're hoping we can get more of a final decision coming up very soon so that we can make this adjustment, but we did want to bring that to the board. This is all in preparation to avoid a contingency plan. And I think that's where we're headed next, is saying there's options for contingency out there. And again, facts on the ground will determine if we go to one of these contingencies options and really customize them. But as good project managers, we want to make sure that there's contingency options that are there. So Wendy, I'll turn it back over to you.
All right, thanks, John and Marla. You can go to the next slide, please. All right, so as John was saying, we are looking at contingency plan, just, again, as part of good project management. So some of the things that we're considering, and we actually received some feedback from a couple of groups about, things that were really important as we look at any kind of potential contingency plans. First is, we want to make sure that we're timing those county cutovers to minimize shifting any counties to earlier dates. And again, if we're talking contingency, it means that we probably are shifting schedules in some way. So we want to minimize, the number or how many counties might have to go to an earlier date. We also want to make sure that we're really conscious about the time between each wave, but specifically between waves 1 and 2, to make sure that we learn from that first cutover so that we can actually have time to reinforce some things, maybe strengthen some other items before we go live with the next wave. We also want to make sure that we're conscious of the customers and the county staff during the holiday season and try to minimize impact as much as we possibly can with that. And if we are shifting schedules, we want to make sure that we're, allowing additional time to prepare for the UAT, county data validation, and the overall cutover experience. We're also looking at what does it look like for the county side if we are stacking up validation, training, UAT, preparation, and the other activities that are happening. What does it look like from the county perspective and their staffing? We also are looking at not impacting policy releases and commitments, meaning that if we have major releases, we're trying to be conscious of when those go live and what does that mean for our commitments. And again, I call this kind of like our big math problem, which is looking at our 84-hour conversion windows, data conversion loads, the training staffing, the implementation support, and all those different factors of how the project can also equally support and make sure that the counties have a successful cutover. We're also, the last two kind of go hand in hand. One is that we have a federal mandate that we must wrap up by December 2023. And of course, that impacts, some of our federal funding is in play with that. And we're also looking at the vendors across the board and all of our efforts to be as cost neutral as possible. So we can go to the next slide, please. All right, so the next couple of slides, you're going to see draft and working everywhere, because what we want to make sure everyone understands is that we are planning still. We have some working models. They are draft. There's nothing that has been set in stone yet. Again, as John said, this is part of just good project management to think through the options of what could work. Our models are continually work in progress. We will be refining them if we do need to go there. And they are being provided here just so you have awareness of what we're thinking. And I do want to say like big capital letters, if we have to implement a contingency plan, we will bring back, an optimal plan that really honors all those contingency planning considerations. We want to make sure that we are taking into consider all those factors and coming up with the best solution possible. We understand that anything that we do has to have lots of conversations with our counties, our state, our federal stakeholders and partners. We're going to work closely with the impacted counties to adjust as needed, and of course, communicate changes, and not just communicating changes to the county, but helping them if they need to communicate changes to their staff as well. So we understand any kind of change has these ripple effects that's beyond just changing a date because of all the other interrelated things that are going on for the counties. You can go to the next slide, please. All right, so what you see here are 3 working models that we are playing with. And again, draft everywhere, nothing set in stone, but these are where we're thinking. And they all have pros and cons. So the first working model is we keep the 6-wave configuration and we shift all the dates out to start January 23 and end December 23. This, the pros, of course, is it gives us about 3 more months to prepare. And I think we'd actually slip contra costs into wave 2 already, but it would actually be in May possibly January 23. But we would be, competing a little bit. The cons would be we are competing a little bit with those holiday seasons and also bumping up against that last minute of federal mandate of getting it in before December 2023. Our second working model is really shifting wave 1 to February 23 and replanning for 5 waves. And we would be looking at ending that with November 23. Now, what this means is like for wave 1, we'd go live in February 23, and then wave 2 would be May 23. So there's about 3 months of time in between those 2 waves to allow for some regrouping if we need to integrate some of the things we learned from wave 1. And then the following waves would follow on a 2-month cadence. The last working model, number 3, is to reduce wave 1 counties and then replan for 5 waves. So what we would be looking at with this one is wave 1, we would go live in October, maybe November with Placer and Yolo. And then wave 2 would have a few more counties in it, but it wouldn't start until March. So that gives us 4 to 5 months to really make some adjustments in there to plan. And then after that, we have 3 months between wave 2 and wave 3 with the 3rd wave going live in June. And then 2-month cadence after that for the waves 4 and 5, ending in October 23. So we still meet the federal mandate and we're not impacting the enhanced funding at all. So again, these are all working models. If we need to go to a contingency plan, more discussions would need to be had, as well as there might be a 4th model somewhere in there that's actually a hybrid of these that really works well for all the counties and the project, so we can have a good cutover experience for everyone. That's what I have for now, Michael. Back to you. And John, I see John popping up again. So John, if you want to add something else.
Go ahead, John.
No, we're not here yet. And again, facts on the ground will drive it if we get there, and the board will definitely be in the know on this, as well as the project steering committee. We wanted just to bring this forward to show that there is planning going on. Our job is to mitigate the risk and to stay on task. If there's something outside of our control where we cannot do that, we have working models, but the facts will drive. If we have one of these or a hybrid, and there's a ton of communication that would have to take place.
Thank you to the project, because we want to be transparent about what we're thinking, even in a contingency mode. It's nice to see we've got at least 3 draft kind of ideas out there. These are just ideas at this point, and that directors will be engaged pretty significantly in any reality where we have to start to look at these closer, so that they can see what the pros and cons are for their particular county and the whole schedule, as well as the benefit to the entire effort. So I appreciate you sharing this stuff early, so we can, all the directors can take a look at that. And then if we end up in a position where we're having to consider these, we can start more detailed discussions. And like I said, have the directors very involved in pro and conning this out with us.
Yeah. And Michael, I think I actually forgot the last slide there, but just really quickly, we will be continuing to, with our mitigation and contingency planning, and bring back updates to this group, as well as our state and federal partners, any impacted counties, and also OPAC. And then we'll just continue to monitor those risk triggers and report progress as we go along. So thank you.
Great. Any questions, comments from our directors on the presentation you just heard, to our state partners? Okay, any public comment on that presentation? Okay, then we'll go ahead and move along. I believe we're going to postpone the next item to the next meeting.
Yeah,
And
Michael, do that. We'll move our retro. The team's done a lot of work. We know that it's important to the board that we look at the C4 migration experience, provide those lessons learned. Team's done a lot of good work on that. We're using those items. If you look at those slides, the team is employing those items, and we'll come back and give an update in May on that. And then skip over and do a brief policy update now.
Thank you. Is that
Lisa?
Karen?
Oh, yes, I'm here. Good morning. It's still morning, right? So before we get going, and Karen's going to cover some of the key policy that has been implemented in the system since we last met and what's coming around the corner. One thing I wanted to just mention, we did talk earlier about the help desk tickets and process and communication. We talked a little bit about this with PSC yesterday as well. We did want to acknowledge that I think earlier this week and last week, there were a couple of items that were raised by the counties where we lacked sufficient communication to the end users. Namely, the two examples that come to mind is there was a change related to the NEC NOAA, as well as timing for the Medi-Cal RE packets this month. Both of those should have been communicated in advance clearly and timely, and unfortunately they were not. The end result of that was that we got a lot of tickets to the help desk, and as we saw earlier, we see a number of statistics around not a system issue. These are really good examples of where had we got the communication correct and timely, we would have avoided that influx of tickets. We realize that every time someone has to take time out of their day to write tickets, they're not doing something else. And in this case, these tickets went all the way to the developers. So it was quite a time-consuming process for everyone. So pulling on that thread, we're actually using these examples to go back and look at where the communication breakdown was, how that can be improved, whether it's the method with which it was sent out. In one case, the release note was insufficient. So we're definitely working with Gretchen and the strike team to make sure that we can use these examples to improve as we move forward. So I just wanted to acknowledge a couple of those items, and then I'll hand this over to Karen so she can cover the policy updates.
Thanks, Lisa. For the sake of the meeting, I will just mention that these slides contain some of our top items that we've put in or are planning to put in. And so I will leave that to you to take a look. If you have questions, feel free to ask. And when the May revise comes out, we will be taking a look to see if there's any impacts to things that we have planned and make any adjustments based on the outcome of any legislation that also gets approved. So I will turn it back to you, Michael, for follow-up.
Okay, thank you. As you guys can see, there's a number of items that are going in these builds. If you have any questions or comments you'd like to offer right now, this would be the time for our directors and state partners. Okay, any public comment? Okay, we'll go ahead and move on to the next item. I believe that's MFA.
Yeah, this is Mike Tamakian. Good morning, everybody. So we are working on the MFA SMS texting implementation. We've sent out a CIT to the counties to opt in for the counties that want to opt in for this feature. The current test timelines were April 25th. This Monday, we're going to offer this to our project staff to start testing. And then May 2nd, we will move this to our pilot. We'll invite our pilot counties to start testing. And we are going to go to production on May 23rd with this feature. We will host a live bridge during that first week to handle any issues or any questions that the counties may have. Next slide, please. We have 2 additional SCRs. One of them was the MFA enhancement to reduce the amount of times that MFA is requested. We're looking at some solutions, and we're working with security. So that's in progress. And then the next one is the consistency around the, the consistency around the 20-minute timeout across our applications. We're working with our vendors and collecting the requirements for that piece. Back to you, Michael.
Okay, thanks, Mike. I think the key for a lot of us is those SCRs and really trying to drive those forward, because I think they're going to help a lot for the counties. But I'll open it up to other county directors' comments or questions on this for our state partners. Okay, any public comment on this MFA update? Okay, hearing none.
Oh, this is Gilbert. I'm sorry, I couldn't get to the unmute fast enough. Just a quick question in regards to the pilot. How will we receive updates on how the pilot's going? Will we get that from our regional managers or?
Yeah, so after we do the testing, we'll have a week. We gave a little week window there just to see if we have to change anything, and we will provide communication to the RMs on the status, and then they can send it out to the respective parties.
Thank you, Gilbert. Appreciate the input. And like I said, Mike, this is important for us to make this easier to use.
Absolutely.
And also, security is just as good as people use it, right? So we got to make sure it's easier to use. So thank you for pursuing that. And we'll go ahead and move on. Thanks, Mike. Okay, we got a procurement update, John.
Tom, are you out there?
I am.
Very good.
So we're moving along with our M&O procurement. We've got a lot of interest from the vendor community. The reviews from the state sponsors are coming in on a flow basis, and we're addressing those. We plan to get it off for federal review on May 12th. And all the other dates stay the same, with July 26th of 2022 being our planned RFP date. A number of counties and legislators are being contacted by various vendors, and since we're not in the fully locked down procurement position, they're free to talk as they wish until the RFP drop date of July 26th. That's the procurement update. Back to you, Michael.
Okay, thanks a lot, Tom. Any questions, comments from our board member state partners on the procurement? Okay, any public comment? All right, we'll go ahead and move on. Thank you very much, Tom.
All right, it's Wendy again on for the CalSAWS conference in the upcoming June membership. In January, we actually, after our conference, we asked for your feedback. And what we heard from you is that you really wanted to see some separation between the business and the informational portion of the conference, maybe conducted over a couple of days, provide more time for topic discussions, and then provide more forums for interactive discussion. And of course, really bring to bear a lot of the hot topics that are important for the counties. Go to the next slide. So what we've constructed is a 2-day conference. The first day will be all about the business meeting, where a couple of hours to cover all the nominations, elections, the JPA board business and procurement updates. In this one, the Brown Act rules will apply to this first day because it is a business meeting. On the second day, we want to hold it more of a true CalSAWS conference fashion, so that it will be on June 23rd from 8:30 to 4:30. We'll have some general session topics, but we'll also have some morning and afternoon breakout sessions. The forum is open to all attendees, and we can actually cover up to 1,000 participants. So Brown Act rules will not apply for this one. We would not have people who are moderating with member and public comment, but it would be open to everyone equally. Can you go to the next slide, please? All right, so just a very quick one. I won't really spend much time on this. Our day one agenda would really be just our normal business meeting with elections, contract items, procurement updates, and an overview of the conference coming up. And if we go to day 2, I'm sorry, I'm rushing through this because we have very little time left. So for day 2, we're really looking at a structure where we have some updates, some general updates in the morning for legislative updates, upcoming releases, an implementation roadmap reviews, really talking about where we're going over the next couple of years. And after a quick morning break, we'll have a morning breakout sessions, and these will be concurrent sessions over a 90-minute period to talk about imaging reports, dashboards, UAT, OCM, post-conversion banner cases, and benefits Cal. And these are some of the topics that we've talked about. Again, this is draft and we're finalizing some of those. We want to get some feedback. After we go to lunch, we'll come back. We're looking to potentially have a guest speaker, get an idea, cultural transformation update. And after a quick break, we would come back and have a repeat of the morning breakout sessions in the afternoon, so people have time to be able to attend more than one of the sessions. And then we'll have a general conference closing. And again, we want to provide this to you as a potential outline for the conference agenda and get some feedback from you. I know we're really short on time today, so I think if you want to provide some comments back, please use your regional managers. And John, you may have some other avenues that you want to get some comments back as well. So please chime in there as well.
Yeah, definitely. I think you could always email me, but your regional managers are going to be working on finalizing this, and we'll bring it back to the May meeting. But we definitely wanted to make sure that these breakout sessions are 90 minutes long, have a panel there, low on handing out content and high on interactive discussion, best practices, county practices, those types of things. So there's time for that dialogue amongst counties and participants. So yeah, regional managers, or feel free to email me directly. Thank you, Wendy.
Thank you.
Michael, back to you.
Great. Hopefully directors out there, you see that we're trying to be responsive to your input on changing the annual meeting to be a much more interactive, forward-thinking, strategic kind of approach to the project. And please take this and meet with your management teams and give us some constructive feedback so we can go ahead and start to finalize this. So thank you very much. If there's any comments or questions, you could, from our directors or our state partners, go ahead and voice them now. Okay, hearing none. Any public comment on this? Okay, hearing none, we'll go ahead and move on to our last update.
Hi, this is Kayleen Lyman from IVNB. I will keep this short so we can end this meeting on time. These are the 6 areas that IVNB is currently looking at. As you can see, we are continuing to monitor imaging stability, the Los Angeles cutover there that is taking place this weekend. CalWIN converted data testing, batch performance, CalWIN implementation readiness, and continuing to monitor CalSAWS benefits Cal releases and post-implementation support, along with the overall CalSAWS risk mitigation. That was my very, very quick, short and sweet to make sure that we end on time. But if anybody has any questions for IVNB, I would be happy to answer them.
No, I do want to just keep emphasizing how important IVNB and also our QA vendors are to be our extra independent check on things that we may have missed. And so I really can keep encouraging you guys to bring things forward so that we can improve the project, improve the services, improve the product. Any other comments, questions from our board members or state partners on this IVNB slide deck? Okay, hearing none. Any public comment? Okay, hearing none. I think we've reached our end of the meeting with 1 minute or a half a minute to spare. And so we did catch up. So thank you all for helping us do that. And I think this was a really productive and good discourse this meeting, and sort of sets the stage for what we need to do throughout the rest of the project to make sure we're all going to be successful. I think we're in this together. And so everybody putting their feedback in is going to make for a better product, a better implementation in the end. Our next meeting is Friday, May 13th, and that one will now bounce back to a 12:30 start. So please make sure you don't set your alarms and wake up at 9 and end up on the call. It's going to be at 12:30. John, you have any other parting comments for everyone?
Well, great job keeping us on time, Michael. Thank you.
All right, thanks everybody. See you next month. Take care. Have a good weekend.